And given the hour and the presence of a quorum, I'd like to call the October 19th, 2020 meeting of the Acton Board of Selectmen to order. The town of Acton, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Acton Department of Health, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. The town hall is closed to the public. This meeting will be broadcast live, local access cable on Acton TV channel, or streaming online at the Acton TV YouTube live channel, and audio will be broadcast live on the radio on WAEEM 94.9 FM. To participate remotely from a computer, please click on the link below to join the public meeting. That's webinar https://zoom.us/j/5039 18785, or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 50385. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the quote, raise hand feature to request to speak. David, are there any citizen concerns?
Okay, 1 second. Yes, there are.
The first, please.
Okay. Alyssa Nickel?
Hi, this is Alyssa Nickel. I live on School Street. I hope that you share my concern that I'd like to bring to you tonight. I'd like to call on this board to make a unifying statement regarding the school committee decision to retire the colonial mascot. As evidenced by your vote at your last meeting, I realize that all of you have your personal views, but because it's been well documented that unifying messages from leaders decrease violent reactions, I'd like you to consider this request. And I'm not speaking of physical violence, but verbal violence and vitriol, which our entire community is witnessing on social media. The school committee members are being called ignorant, morons, uneducated. There are calls for their impeachment or resignation. There's talk of invoking the Freedom of Information Act to get the emails sent to the school committee published. There's even a demand for a list of names of students that are members in the after-school club, the ABSEDGE. There are rallying cries to not let this stand and overturn the decision of the school committee at town meeting. There are even statements that there is no place in our community for people who encourage and support these students, claiming that they're teaching them to hate and be ashamed of our country. This is unacceptable. And to think that Captain Isaac Davis himself would support the students who are seeking to have their voices heard over the din of the established authority of an older generation, to adopt a symbol which is representative of the student body that exists today. This seems that it would be in alignment with his values and all those who fought in the revolution for freedom from oppression. These students are doing exactly what we taught them and raised them to do. They're being passionate, listening to fellow students whose ancestors were subjugated to the horrors of genocide and slavery. In Acton, our monuments and historic sites still stand. Our libraries and history classes remain. Our historical society and the tradition of our Acton Minutemen and their march on Isaac Davis Trail every year is still protected. One school committee member asked all community members who feel a discomfort by this change, who might feel a loss for a treasured symbol, feel that it's being canceled, to take a moment and think of the indigenous people, of the Africans who were enslaved, and the subsequent erasure and cancellation of so much of their culture. I would like to echo her invitation for all of us to sit with these thoughts and also to remember that the older generation is the very one that taught these young folk, in the words of all of the signs planted in yards around town with Big Bird on them, to be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Is there anyone else?
There are more.
I'm sorry?
There are more. Corey Salo?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Great. Hi, I'm Corey. I'm an Acton resident, clinical psychologist, and a member of Racial Justice for Black Lives. I think that it's also important to share that I'm a white woman. With this identity comes privilege as well as blind spots that prevent me from knowing about the experiences of those different from myself until I make a concerted effort to check my blind spot by intentionally learning about others' experiences. I'm going to invite you all to do the same. Think about your identities, think about your privilege, and acknowledge your blind spots. That brings me to the discussion you all had at your last meeting about racism. It was concerning to me. That being said, today I'm choosing to assume good intentions and that you think racism is bad. I imagine that is why at least 2 of you expressed difficulty acknowledging racism in Acton. You're all familiar with the term racism, but may not know that it falls on a continuum. On one end is overt or explicit racism, such as lynchings or Jim Crow laws. I wonder whether this is the type of racism you were thinking of at your last meeting. On the other end is implicit racism, which are, and I quote, unconscious biases, expectations, or tendencies, regardless of ill will or any self-aware prejudices. For example, me personally, when someone tells me about their doctor or professor, my mind almost always visualizes a white person. This bias that I hold is harmful. Another example is a select board member saying that they don't believe racism exists in our town. I am worried, deeply worried, that you think the DEIC needs to prove to you or provide evidence that racism has occurred here. There are plenty of other examples already if you look around. Luckily, what matters more than being racist, since it's nearly impossible for a white person to grow up without these biases. Therefore, we all make mistakes and we're all learning. But what's more important is what you do with this racism and how you work to counteract it or be actively anti-racist, as Ibram Kendi discusses. I have much more to say, but I'll put that in an email to you all and let another person have a turn to share. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kira Wilson Cook?
Yes, hi, thank you. This is Kira Wilson Cook, 20 High Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm doing so as a private citizen and not as a member of the school committee. I want to voice my disappointment that the board declined to take up the work of signing onto or drafting a statement of anti-racism during the last meeting, as at least 19 other towns in our region, including neighboring Boxborough, have done so. I'm especially disappointed by the tenor of the conversation, in which a member of the board flippantly dismissed the notion of racism as a real and actual concern in our town. Another member described a listing of Black victims of police brutality as a shopping list, and a third member laughed during the discussion. I thank the members who took the discussion seriously. However, I was disheartened to witness members of our executive body being so dismissive of a step to help assure the dignity, equity, and safety of our neighbors. I can assure you that there is an undercurrent of racism here in Acton. I've received more than my fair share of emails over the last few weeks to prove it. Furthermore, by so belittling the very idea of racism in our town in such a public way, the board is sending a clear signal to other members of our community that this is not something to care about or consider. The board has communicated that the experiences of people of color who live, work, and raise our children here are not important, relevant, or worthy of consideration. I feel compelled to speak tonight to make clear this is not a signal the board should send. I hope that the board will be more empathetic and considerate the next time the topic of racism comes up, and will take this important topic much more seriously, as other towns have done. The failure of Acton's Board of Selectmen to do so reveals the presence of a problem, not an absence of a problem. I trust that this is a learning experience for everyone, and I look forward to constructive discussion in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson-Cook.
There's one more, John.
Sure.
Telephone caller, please identify yourself.
Hi, it's Tara from West Acton, and I agree with the previous speakers wholeheartedly. It's very hard for me to believe the things that I heard. I really didn't realize that the issues were that deep. And I urge you to read some of the books that are on the reading list for the Racial Justice for Black Lives reading list, and engage in the learning that I am going through myself, and find it very rewarding. I also want to ask, are you going to accept public comment at the dog park item?
Yes, we will.
Oh, good, thanks. So I'll save my comments till then. And I have one last question. I sent an email in asking about the $19 million commitment that the MassWorks grant application. They said that the town contribution to the sewer expansion project that was being proposed would be $19 million, and I would like a response in writing as to where that will come from. Thank you.
We'll have John respond. John will respond to that. No, in writing, that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
That's all, John.
Okay. So for the chair's update, want to thank John, town staff, and particularly Lisa Tommel and Teresa O'Leary for the excellent work done on Friday for the Narrow Pavilion ribbon cutting, and earlier today for the groundbreaking for the North Acton Fire Station. Thank you all very much. I've got a number of emails, texts, personal thank yous for those small business grant recipients who received their checks over the last couple of weeks. We're all very appreciative for the support, the shot in the arm, and they will put the money to good use. I had dropped you an email over, I think it was the Columbus weekend, just mentioning that I had met with Wes Folks. Wes Folks is the chairman of the Boxborough Board of Selectmen, who was the principal author of the Boxborough Statement on racial disparities. And I reached out to him. I had met Wes at a select board conference shortly after we were both elected to our positions, and I think it was in June of 2018, and we had a connection. Wes and our two sons, Ward and Marty, overlapped and served together on the high school student council. I think it was from 2003 to 2006. And we shared our backgrounds, our families. The discussion went on for about 4 hours, so it covered a lot of ground. It went off on tangents at times, but the basic points were we discussed our backgrounds, our families, and our life experiences around race. We had a considerable part of the time we devoted to the words racism and racist and how they are defined and used. We talked about the racial and ethnic compositions of our respective towns and what it is we are really trying to do in this discussion, and what we would most like to see happen. So it was a very worthwhile conversation, and we're going to keep it going. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 2 at 7 p.m. So John, your manager's update, please.
Thank you. Yes, I want to reiterate, very exciting to celebrate the success we've had with the groundbreaking today for the North Acton Fire Station and the ribbon cutting on Friday. And thank you to the board members for all being there and showing your support and for speaking and being part of the program. And I want to also thank Lisa Tommel and Teresa O'Leary and Austin Saganowitz, who did a lot of work to make those ceremonies go so smoothly. So thanks again. And also wanted to mention to the viewers and listeners that Acton TV was at both events. And if you're interested in watching, you can check them out on Acton TV's YouTube channel. And they may also broadcast on local cable. So also big things are happening with early voting. We had early voting start here on Saturday. We had 119 the first day, 114 the second day, and 196 today. So by tomorrow, we will pass the amount of voters that we had vote in total during the primary, early voting wise. We had 500 people vote early voting during the primary, and I think we'll be there before lunch tomorrow, which is great news. People are using it. Due to COVID restrictions and the way we have it set up, we're only allowing 2 people into the building at a time. So people should know to plan to spend a little bit of time here if they're going to do it. Over the last few days, people have waited as much as an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on when you were arrived. So plan ahead, and also look, we're doing this for another 11 days after today. So maybe it'll slow down a little bit later in the week. Also, just wanted to mention that we've had more than 5,000 mail-in ballots already returned. Just under 10,000 applications were submitted for mail-in ballots. We sent back the ballots, and we've already received back over 5,000. So a lot of voting has already happened in Acton, is what I wanted to tell you. Drive-up windows. We held a public forum last week virtually. About 30 people attended, talked about some of the pros and cons of allowing drive-up windows at our local establishments. The next steps for that process are a survey. We'll be publishing a survey to get additional feedback from people. And we're having another public outreach meeting on December 10th. So look for that on our communication channels. Kelly's Corner. We're continuing to work very hard on that. We met with Mass DOT this week about a traffic control agreement, and I'm going to work with council to see whether or not it needs to come to the board for approval. But in any event, it's just an agreement between us and the state on all the different rules that'll be in place in the new intersection. You know, when you can turn right and the different traffic signalization. So the project is moving along. We're also looking at a project to help save some of the trees that are planned to be removed. And so that work is underway with our engineers. So I can give you more updates on that as we get further along. Another public forum and online survey that I really want people to take note of is over by the South Acton train station, the 19 to 21 Maple Street property, which we acquired last year, formerly owned by Gordon Richards. We're doing a feasibility study to see how best to use that property. And one of the ways that we're getting input on that is we're holding a public forum, and that'll be on November 5th at 7 p.m. It'll be a virtual forum. There'll be a newsflash going out about that soon. Also, as part of that, we're doing a survey. The survey has already been created, and that will be published either tonight or tomorrow. So check the website for that as well. Again, it's 1921 Maple Street, public forum, November 5th, 7 p.m. And I think that's all I had for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So member minutes, Jim?
Oh, sure. So in addition to the fire station groundbreaking and the Nara Sports Pavilion opening, we had another launch ceremony this weekend. I represented the board at the opening of the solar car canopies at Congregation Beth Elohim. This is the largest solar installation at a house of worship in Massachusetts, and I'm very proud that it's here in Acton. It's a 300 kilowatt project that'll provide clean renewable power for the sanctuary and also provide reductions in electricity costs for 16 lower income households across the Eastern Mass Eversource territory. So, because a feature of the Massachusetts solar financing laws allows for higher payments from the state for projects that provide community solar benefits to households that have one of those subsidized lower income electric rates. So that was exciting. The other announcement is that the Acton Boxborough Cultural Council is now accepting grant applications for projects taking place in the fall of 2020 or throughout 2021. The council will accept applications until November 16th. The grants support programs in art, culture, and humanities by organizations, schools, and individuals. Application forms and more information are available online at www.mass-culture.org or www.actonboxboroculturalcouncil.org. And if you're interested in the work of the ABCC, they're also looking for volunteers. So go to their website, find out more about them. They're a great group.
Joan?
Yeah, I worked the polls today, and I just want to congratulate all the town employees, especially Austin. He's been fantastic at the front door, welcoming people and keeping them all in good spirits. And Eva and Gail are doing a magnificent job. And the patience of the people standing in line is extraordinary because they want to vote. And it's just a real privilege to see everybody coming in to vote. Thank
you. David?
Nothing this week from me, John.
Thank you. Dean?
Yeah, I actually participated in the virtual forum about the drive windows the other night, and it was some great input, and my commendations for what a great job it was, how smoothly it ran. Matt Murphy did a great job keeping things going, changing some of the surveys and adding options on the fly. Daphne Politis did a good job, our consultant. And I was very pleased and pleased to see that this idea seems to have a great deal of support. So I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to new business number 3, reconsideration of the board's directive for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission to draft a statement for the board on racial disparity for the board's consideration. So to open this discussion up, I have this statement. I was disappointed with the way our October 5 discussion of agenda item 9, discuss statement from MAPC regarding systemic racism went. I had a previous copy of the MAPC statement and did not check the packet which included the Boxborough statement. Therefore, I saw the Boxborough statement for the first time when it went up on the screen and hurriedly tried to read it. The discussion got away from me as chair and led to our motion to have the DEIC draft a statement on racial disparity for the board's consideration. I apologize for that. Overnight, I thought it was important we draft our own statement on racial disparity, and that it be a statement all 5 of us would sign on to. I reached out to Jim Snyder Grant and proposed we craft a statement together for circulation to the full board. Jim agreed to give it a try. Jim and I can report we have an agreed upon statement. I wish to make a motion to be followed by a discussion and then a vote. So may I have a motion that the board rescind its directive of October 5 to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission to draft a statement on racial disparity for the board's consideration. Would someone move the motion? Jim?
Sure, so moved.
Second. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Joan. Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Wait, are we having some discussion here?
We'll have. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's have the discussion. Okay. So the motion has been moved and seconded. Now there's a discussion. Jim, would you please open?
Sure. So it was clear that there was that there was this conflict at the board at the last meeting, and it led to a lot of comment and discussion among people. So I was happy to respond to John's call to try to come up with something. I'd say we've been using 2 principles to craft a statement. First, a statement that's agreed to by everyone on the board has a special weight, and it's a worthy goal for a statement as important as one about racial disparity. Part of where we got stuck last week in our differences was on the word racism. Now, see, I recognize that for some on the board, racism is an individual moral failing to treat people of different racial groups fairly. And for others of us, it means the way that our interlocked systems of law and politics and regulation and individual actions, especially those in power, create disparate impacts, particularly for Black people in the US. So because of these big differences in the way we think of those words, our statement talks about racial disparities and talks about their sources and possible actions to work against them without using that particular word racism. A usable consensus statement from the board that uses the word racism, I think that's still important, but it'll need to wait until the board has a shared definition of what it means. So I recommend we keep talking and reading and learning about this. There's plenty of compelling material out there. The second statement we used, the second principle we used to craft a statement was that it was important to identify concrete problems that can be addressed by town action. Because we clearly have disagreements about statewide or national solutions, and we don't necessarily need to resolve those differences, but we are charged with leadership in this town. A lot of the topics that we might address are formally and correctly in the purview of the DEIC, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusivity Commission. So the statement draft is careful to note that we are looking forward to the broader and more complete findings and recommendations of the DEIC. But in the meantime, there are areas of disparity that we can identify without needing to wait for the DEIC. The one that seemed to fit the best in the conversations I had with John was disparities in housing. So that's a major focus of the draft. So I think that's a summary of where our new draft is headed, and also why we're recommending working on it ourselves as a board to free the DEIC to focus on all of their longer term work.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, discussion? David?
So, setting aside for the fact that two members of this board decided to take action that was contrary to the vote of this board, I find I'll set that aside, but I find that really distressing. Frankly, I don't want some watered down statement that says racism bad or avoids the use of the word racism and that we don't have racism here. We've had a girl at our high school has had the N-word written on her locker. Swastikas are found in our playgrounds. In the past few weeks, I've heard of 2 instances where Chinese people have been called ethnic slurs out of passing car windows. Of course, people can have different opinions on any issue, like the Prescott issue, but in the statements coming out of some people in the recent discussion were disgusting. Telling people that if they don't like what Acton is, they shouldn't have come here. That's just a variant of go back where you came from. At a meeting I was at concerning housing a few years ago, I personally heard a woman say, "We don't need more of those people here." Please don't tell me that we don't have racism. In the past, I've spoken about a number of things that Acton can be justifiably proud of. But let's not deceive ourselves that we're perfect. We need to continue to move forward. Personally, I don't understand what's the point of making a watered down statement. What good is that going to do? Are we trying to congratulate ourselves? If we really believe that we do well here, why are we concerned about making a strong statement? Where the statement comes from is not as important to me. The draft statement comes from is not as important to me as what the outcome is, the statement that we're voting on. And it's a statement that's specifically designed not to ruffle feathers won't do. That's what's meant by white fragility. Actions that we take affect real people, not just feathers. We need to do the right thing.
Well, I hope you would.
I didn't finish, John, please.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
I would like to continue with our what we did last time and have the DEIC draft a statement. Failing that, I have a draft policy statement prepared. I can give to the board at any time, and I would like us to vote on that. I'm happy to read it now if you would like.
No, we're not reading statements.
That's fine, but I am. We cannot have a watered down statement that's that has no effect.
Well, I hope the motion that Jim and I brought forward would pass tonight, and that the the draft statement that we put together would be released, and I hope you will, read it and see where we were coming from. It's really important that all 5 of us get behind a statement. It's a first step, and it's a good first step. Are there any other comments? Dean?
Yeah, I definitely agree that we should have a statement that we could all agree on. I think obviously the discussion 2 weeks ago got away from all of us. I was in the same situation the chairman was. I had not seen the statement from Boxborough until I was reading it live on the screen. Didn't really have a chance to analyze it. Certainly did not phrase my statement as well as I should have, and I think might have misled a whole lot of people. The key things that I think should be on a statement is obviously racism is bad. Obviously, people should be made to feel welcome in this town. There's no room for any kind of hatred or vandalism, graffiti, racial slurs. That's beyond the pale, and certainly it'll always be here to a certain extent. Some of that was here 50 years ago. Hopefully it's not gotten any worse. I think everybody has to do a lot of work, not just from the government side, but from education, religion, and families, to let people know that this is not acceptable. And certainly I'll disallow this. I think, jumping on what Jim had said, that I think there is a disconnect on the word racism and racist, and certainly there's a disconnect between what the community as a whole is doing and what local government can actually do. I think that certainly in my years of service with the town, I don't believe I've ever seen anything overtly racist going on from local government. But certainly that's something that needs to be investigated and watched, and I look forward to reports from DEIC coming out to see if anybody else has seen it. Obviously, I'm not the kind of person that is going to get exposed to a lot of racist statements, or anybody else on the board. So I make a distinction between what's happening in the larger community and what's happening in local government, and what our role is as members of the select board. I have no problem at all whatsoever in signing on a statement condemning racism in the abstract and in the larger community. I also feel that if there's a statement coming from the board, I think it's important that we as a board explain what actions local government can take. And, if there's a problem, it needs to be resolved. If there's not a problem, we always need to be aware of possible things coming up that impact the actions of local government. So my focus would be, for any kind of a statement, whether DEIC or this board comes up with, is to focus it locally and to make a distinction between the larger community and what concrete actions this board can do. So, that being said, I'd be happy to read whatever drafts any of you individually or collectively have come up with, and or if DEIC wants to come up with one, within those parameters would be the kind of things that I'd look for. But I think certainly it's horrific for me that people have felt so unwelcome in this town, and certainly the outpouring of letters and emails and that sort of thing has certainly been an eye-opener for me. And I hope it's something that we can accept, we can understand, we can take some actions, and we can move forward. Thanks.
Anyone else? So may we then vote on the motion that's been moved and seconded? I can reread the motion that the board rescind its directive of October 5 to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission to draft a statement on racial disparity for the board's consideration. So if there's no further comment, can Jim?
I don't have a coherent amendment to this motion, but I wish there were a way to bring David's work already on this statement into the process, and to not miss the, so I would like to figure out a way to do that. One possibility is that if the statements, David's statement and the one that we came up with gets sent to a staff person who's not subject to the OML, then at our next meeting we could have a right before the meeting, at the same time as the public finds out, we could see all the statements, both statements at once, and then have a ground to work together from. There might be a way of looking at both statements and understanding, where we might need to go from here to find a statement that is both strong and works for everyone on the board.
So what the sense was to take a look at David's statement and the statement that we crafted, and put together a statement from the two, circulate the two statements amongst the board ahead of the November 2nd meeting, and take it up at the November 2nd meeting.
I guess we would need to circulate it just prior to the meeting.
So with the packet that goes out on Thursday, October 29th.
Yeah.
David, is that something you're good with?
I think that's the best I'm going to get.
Thank you. But to do that, then let's just go forward with the motion. Again, I think it's important that the statement come from us, be prepared by us, and that would be the reason for the motion. And I'm sorry to the DEIC for whatever work has been, put in on it. And again, I apologize for letting the discussion 2 weeks ago get ahead of me. So if there's no further discussion, can we then vote on the motion? So David, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Joan, I'm sorry.
Why are we voting on the motion if we're going to consider both?
No, we're considering David's statement and the statement Jim and I prepared, and ask the DEIC to step back on drafting their statement. That's the reason for the motion.
But that wasn't what the motion said.
Yeah, it does say that. That
Didn't
the board.
include David's.
No, David's motion is, David's statement, I believe, is his own statement.
Can you read the motion once more, please, John?
That the board rescind its directive of October 5 to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission to draft a statement on racial disparity for the board's consideration.
Right, so all this does, Joan, is to undo what we did last time.
Okay.
Okay. So then, David, would you call our roll, please?
Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I say nay. So it's 4-1.
Okay, so the motion passes. So we'll what will go out in the packet on October 29th is the statement Jim and I prepared and the statement David has prepared. And then at our meeting, we've already had the opportunity to go through the statements, and we'll try to combine and craft a statement at the meeting. Okay? Well, thank you. response updates. John?
Thank you. Yes, we are we're continuing to monitor the situation in the community, both in our community and the school district. And we had our case numbers today are right at 6, but we did hit 8 over the weekend. So it's trending upward, and we really want people to take the guidance from the Board of Health and the Department of Public Health very seriously. And if you have questions about what to do if you've heard of someone that has a positive or a friend who had a positive, make sure you contact the Board of Health and find out, and don't just rely on what you think you should be doing, because we've heard of people that aren't following necessarily what they're supposed to be following for quarantine orders, and we encourage people to use the local Board of Health as the primary source of information and not rely on sports groups or other groups that may be trying to disseminate information in a helpful way, but we still would like people to verify with their local Board of Health if there's a question about what they need to be doing if they hear about someone having an incident. That's really I think that's the Board of Health is meeting right now at the same time, and I think they're talking a lot about that. Sports organizations in particular, I think they're talking about just making sure that message is clear, that use the local Board of Health as a resource. We also have information about flu clinics that we'll be publishing hopefully by the end of the week. We're kind of waiting on finalization of certain things. We'll get that out to people as soon as we can. The other update is on the CARES Act funding, although that's a separate item, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I think that's all for now, unless there's any questions. I guess one other thing is we had been planning and working very hard to work on ways to phase in reopening of our public buildings, primarily the town hall and the library. The library did open yesterday for appointments only, and if you're interested in doing that, you need to sign up online, and they let you in for a half-hour window. Only a certain number of people in the building at a time. We're going to hold off on opening town hall until early voting is over, just because there's a lot going on in the parking lot and the building, and we're gonna hold off until early November for that. So that's all I had. There was one committee that was looking to meet. We wanted to get clearance from the board. We would normally do those during these meetings.
That would be RAC, is the
the Water Resources Advisory Committee, I think, was one that was looking for clearance to
have virtual meetings. So do you mind, people mind taking it up? It wasn't on tonight's agenda. But why don't we just bring it up under your report, unless anyone objects. Okay, seeing no objection. So would someone move that we give the Water Resource Advisory Committee the ability to meet remotely? Is there somebody move it? Jim? Okay, Jim seconds. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, so David, call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay. So, John, is that?
Yes.
Then the fifth item is also, John, the CARES Act reimbursement request from Acton Boxborough Regional School District and the Minuteman High School.
Yes, we received two requests from each district outlining costs that they have incurred that they're seeking to be subrecipients of our CARES Act funding. As the board knows, every community in the Commonwealth was issued a certain amount of funding through CARES, and communities that have school district as part of their operation can distribute funds to them. Communities that use the regional school district have to actually disperse the funding through the community to the regional school district as a subrecipient. And in our case, we have two of those potential subrecipients. The school district's request was what they're looking to have reimbursed after all of the funding that they were available to use has been exhausted. The request is for a total of $468,000, which we pay, the prorated version of that as a share of the district at $395,230. So that amount is what's they're requesting. I just wanted to mention that and I'm looking for the board to let me know they're comfortable with putting in for that request amount. But I also wanted to share some guidance that we've received from our financial advisors on this next round of CARES Act fund. They're actually encouraging us to put in for the remaining balance, and to have all the money, the whole just under 2.1 million come in to the town, the various things that we think we'll need it for. And this would be an example of one thing. So I'll be working with finance on that. And
could you just say that again? Was the idea to spend all of the money? Is that it by the end of the year?
Well, it's to request all of the money by the end. It's to request all the money now. So our next filing, the next round or the current round for requesting disbursement of funding is September 30th. And after that, there won't be another one. And it'll just be, the only way you'll get the funding is to submit an invoice, basically, and have them pay you direct, which is a much more involved process. So they're suggesting, our team is suggesting, put in for the full amount, and if for some reason we don't need it all, we could give some back. But I think we'll figure out a way to use it all. And this would just make the accounting process and paperwork process a little bit easier on our end.
So the request is just to request the balance right now.
Yes.
And how much is that? And how much is that?
We previously requested just under 200,000, so it's around 1.9 million.
So it's 1.9 million. And would they send us this $1.9 million? Is that
that's the idea?
The process?
Yeah, I think we would, if assuming the board supports dispersing to subrecipients, we would, once we get the funding, we disperse what we can account for, and then we would spend the rest on only the several things that we're working on until the money's exhausted. The one thing that's different now is that FEMA is no longer giving us direct funding for certain PPE and cleaning equipment that they were before. So we expected the run rate on our expenses for that to go up a little bit as of September 15th. And if we hear from the federal government or otherwise that we can use the funding after December, which as of right now, everything we buy has to be purchased and received by the 30th of December to be eligible.
So it's purchased and received by the 30th of December. That's the rule. David?
If we don't have legitimate approved expenses for that amount of money, do we just return the balance? Suppose of the 1.9 million remaining between the schools and the town and everything we could use, let's say 1.3 million, do we return 0.6 million?
I would work hard to not let that happen, but yes, that's the idea.
We can buy extra masks for next year, I suppose.
Do we run any risk in, we have the money, and do we have to report into the state how we spent it?
Yes, so it's a two-step process. We request the funding, and then on a quarterly basis, we report exactly what we've spent it on. And the reporting is really where it counts. So those are reports that we file on a regular basis, and that's what demonstrate exactly what we purchased and how it's eligible, and once that's the compliance that we're working on. So yes, we have to report on it, and we will.
So, but in the end, if we spend money and the state says you shouldn't, that was not an appropriate use under the CARES Act, do they claw the money back? Do we owe the state the money back?
Well, we wouldn't spend the money on things that weren't eligible. So we'd seek the amount in for eligible uses, and then we'd expend them on eligible uses, and then we'd report on those eligible uses. So we wouldn't do them on things that aren't known. And if there's a question, we now have a very good contact in DOR that gets back to you in a day if we have any questions about what's eligible or not. So.
But I take it before we spend anything, the request will go. The question will be asked: is this eligible for eligible use under the CARES Act?
Yes. Yeah. We're being very careful, and that's why, frankly, why we haven't spent as much, is that we're being very deliberate in that process, and we'll continue to be.
So we don't need to take any action under the school's request tonight, then.
I guess I would ask that you let me know of any feedback. And I did talk to council about it briefly, and town council recommended that we do actually do an MOA with the district as a subrecipient, just to make sure that we're on the same page legally for how the money is transferred. So. That is something that I would have to start working on. The superintendent already provided a draft of an MOA, but I think we have some things that we want to change and bring back before the board approves it. But yes, I wanted to know if there's any concerns about this, because if there are, then we won't put in for it.
Are there any concerns that board members may have over the school's request? No, then. Okay, then, please go forward with Peter Light. There was a second request from the Minuteman School District for what looked like just under $40,000.
Yes, and so that's the same thing. They, as a regional school district, they were provided direct assistance from the state through other CARES accounts, and they've exhausted all of those. And what was sent to us in late September was a request for funding from our portion of the CARES Act, and they've sent similar requests to all their other member towns. We're actually meeting with the superintendent as a group on later this week, just to make sure we're on the same page for whether this is the only request we'll see or there's anything else we need to know about. But it itself is a $40,000 request, and most of it is for technology.
Okay, so in addition to the two requests, one from the AB schools and the Minuteman District, we're also asking John to go to the state and request the remaining $1.9 million in CARES funds. We're all good with that. Okay, Jim, Dean.
Thank you,
David. All right, good. So moving along, and we're up to item 6. The W.R. Grace presentation for the solar project and potential reuse options. John?
Thank you. So for this discussion, I'd like to invite David Cantrell to be a panelist. David, could you help me with that?
Yes, I'm looking.
And David Cantrell is going to show a PowerPoint with some information about some work we're doing on their site. W.R. Grace site.
So I promoted him to a panelist. He should come back in a second.
Okay.
I don't know why he didn't come back. Wait.
Okay.
The attendee list. So I assume he's transitioning to a panelist. Usually just takes like 5 seconds though.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'd like to let him.
Oh, there he goes. There he is.
I'm here. Sorry, I got kicked out. It hasn't turned on my video yet. Oh, there we go. Still working on the Zoom thing. Can anyone see me?
Yes, we can see you now. And then, do you know how to share your screen, David?
We'll do so immediately. Did that come through?
We see something. Yes, here we are.
Perfect. Okay. Good. Well, first off, thank you. Thank you to the Board of Selectmen and the town residents for allowing me to come and give a brief update on the Grace site. My name is David Cantrell. I have responsibility over our raw material sourcing as well as our global real estate. And really what I wanted to do is just kind of do a brief overview and really open it up to a discussion on some of the things that we're thinking about in Acton. I think one of the most important things that we really want to do was really, we as WR Grace is acutely aware of the historical legacy at the site, and it's something that we're hoping to work to put behind everybody and really close the chapter and move on. And the one thing that we wanted to be very clear in tonight's discussion is, Grace has no intent to return to operations in Acton. We're looking for ways to repurpose the site, cleaner ways to allow us to continue our obligations at the site. We still have ongoing EPA monitoring that needs to be done for the foreseeable future. And really just, give some flexibility for future uses, not necessarily as, connected to the legacy operations of Grace. So we'll go into specifics, but other than that, if there's anything that the Board of Selectmen would like to touch on specifically or ask ahead of time. Okay. So I think for the purpose of this discussion, when we think about the Grace site, we at Grace think about the north side of the tracks as well as the south side. And for this evening's discussion, we're going to really focus on the south side because those plans are further along. We had started looking at certain things on the north before the pandemic started, and we've put those on hold, and we'll reassess when situations have a little more clarity. So on the south side of the railroad tracks, we are targeting solar use at this site. The particular spot, if you can see on the screen, that's covered in blue, is the area that would make the most sense from a large-scale solar development. There is just south of that a landfill, and then actually, I guess if my cursor moves over it, I don't know if you can actually see me highlighting areas. There's an area where there's a concentration of the continuing monitoring wells that are in the area along the tracks on the north to the west of the proposed solar site. We have our solar partners on the call this evening to answer any specific solar questions as we get into it. But really, what we'd be looking to do is kind of going down the zoning and permitting path next, and we plan on operations starting in 2022. So that's where we're at as far as thought process on future uses. And again, I think really Grace has looked at, we've had an open discussion with a few members of the town over the last year or so while we've started pulling our plans together, and it's really trying to come up with what uses can enable us to continue the access that we need for the continuing monitoring, as well as have some positive uses. I'm going to change slides. I don't know if we want to take questions in the middle or at the end, if any preference. So our partners, Sincarfa and REM, are professionals in the solar space, and specifically in Massachusetts, and one of the reasons why we specifically partnered with them to develop the site. We do have them on the call this evening. I don't know if we want to pull them in now or run through and open it up if we get into technical discussions. John, I don't know if we want to, can we bring in the Sincarfa and REM?
Yeah, I would just wrap up your presentation, and then the board can see about any questions or dialogue.
Sure, we can, and we can pull back through these slides later in these specifically. Again, getting into the site specific, that we are looking at a 5 megawatt solar plant, which is the largest size that we can get into a space of this size. It's the largest generation we can get. Again, getting into some of the benefits, just the clean uses of energy, that it ultimately is one of the main drivers behind what we're looking for at the site. And then we got into the next steps. We've talked about potential tax revenue for the town, and beyond that, that's the update that we have for now. I think ultimately, as we start getting more into the north development, we'll be coming back and having other discussions as those plans get further along.
Okay, so
That's all we prepared.
okay. John, we had one request so far. If we could put the slides, Mr. Cantrell's slides, up on our website.
Yeah, so Lisa will add those to the extra information portion of tonight's meeting in the DocuShare, where we often put things that are presented that night. David, perhaps you could go back to the slide showing the map, just for the discussion.
Sure.
John, you are now muted, in case you were going to try to ask a question about the map.
No, I was just for visual reference for the board's discussion. I thought it would be helpful.
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to launch into a whole series of questions if this was the time.
There was a request from Franny Osman if we could, Mr. Cantrell, if we could just take the map and point out north section, south section.
Sure. Actually, this map is only the south side, so it's very hard to see, but you can see the railroad tracks right along the top of the image. That would actually be the divider. So we're not even showing the north side of the tracks.
Okay, so the south side is where the solar array would be.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
Joan, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was on the Board of Selectmen when the styrene venting incident occurred, and I was called to the site. So I'm very happy to see this proposal for a solar farm, if that's what you call it. But could you show where that styrene venting occurred?
So I specifically do not have the background exactly of what operations were at the different parts of the site. I do know just from the foundational work. I mean, I can point to it, but I would want to have the specific environmental discussions handled by our environmental team. And if we could capture those questions, we have no problem bringing those details back.
Okay. Jim?
Just also to reflect some of the questions that are in the chat. Can you also remind us where? Let's see. I see some landmarks here, but I'm not sure they're marked in a way that people can see them. Could you show us where Independence Road is and where the Concord line is?
Concord line is the diagonal pink. Well, it's actually, this is the Concord Solar Farm,
right,
right on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
And Independence Road, I believe, is coming in.
Yeah.
I want to say it's right over here.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
There was a question from Kim Castens on the chat. If somebody could bring.
I see one Kim's question, which was about getting a set of the slides.
Yeah, there was a second.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Could you show on the map where the concert?
I'm sorry, I don't know if that was my feedback or if everyone heard that.
So the conservation restriction area, I believe, is in the north section, right?
Correct. So it would actually be almost directly north of the solar field. So right on the north side, on the east side, northeast of that.
So I've written down a few questions. I'd be happy to go through them if this was the right time.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So the proposed system is, and maybe you might need to bring in the solar folks, but let me try one and see what we can do here. The proposed system is 5 megawatts, which is, as you said, it's the upper limit of what can be feasibly financed within the Massachusetts Solar Financing Program, known as SMART. My understanding is that any bigger than that, and you would need to be a wholesale supplier of electricity directly to an Eversource substation. I wondered if you ever considered that, and what took you away from that option?
I would definitely leave that to my solar partners as far as their scaling of the site.
Would it be okay?
I don't know if we want to table the technical questions and bring them in, or if we can just bring them in right now.
I think all my questions are probably technical like that.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, David could ask his team to join us and just say what their name is. So
That would be fine.
Okay, who should we find, David?
Can we bring in Brian Copperell and Cliff Chapman? We can bring in the rest of their team, but
I did Brian.
Yes.
And Cliff, there's someone named Cliff, but I know the last name.
I think we can take the chance.
Okay.
And I'll leave it to Brian. I think there are a couple other members of their team on as well, if we need to go further into the details.
Can you see me at this point?
You would have to turn on your video.
Oh, sorry.
We could see you.
View options.
You got Cliff first. Hello, guys.
All right.
And sorry, mine has a mute button in the lower left. Is there a video button? Where's that? Sorry.
Yeah, right next to it, it says stop start video, and it's got a little line through it. It should. It might be better we don't see you, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. Let's leave it as it is. Keep going. I'm not seeing that button. Let's keep moving.
Okay.
Should I go back to my first question?
I can answer it if you'd like.
Great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just take 1 second to introduce myself. Thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm the CEO of Sincarpa Capital, and we've been doing business in Massachusetts for a good many years. We started back in SREC 1, so we've been in the solar market there as a developer and long-term owner. So we've got a lot of experience here, and a lot of folks know us, and you guys could, I'm sure, reach out to folks who could reference us as a company. But the question you asked was about have we considered a wholesale use of this facility instead of smart use, and the answer is we haven't. Well, I guess we have, but from an economic perspective, building a wholesale facility here would likely not make economic sense in the current wholesale market. And so, because where you really see wholesale projects working, they start to get very, very large. So you're talking about 20, 30, 50, 100 megawatts. And here, even if we were to cover the entire site, which we don't think we could do, it would only increase the size by, it would no more than double the size here.
Yeah.
We'd still be at a level where we would not be able to do a project there economically.
Great, thank you. So last I understood, which was a little while ago, a reasonable rule of thumb was that it takes about maybe 4 acres to create a 1 megawatt system. So your 5 megawatt system would take about 20 acres. Is that right?
I think that's about right. I don't know exactly what we have here, but we can get you that number. But that's a good rule of thumb. Yeah, something we can.
It's the
we've estimated.
If I may, the DC-AC conversion you should walk through, Cliff. So because
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Yeah. So when we talk solar, there's the DC size and the AC size.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a 5 megawatt AC size, which is the limit under the program. The rule of thumb that you were speaking of was a DC rule of thumb. So in this case, it would be 7 megawatts DC, roughly 28 acres. Brian, do you have the number there? I just can't. Unfortunately,
it's actually on this. We carved out 30 acres. On
and it's roughly 7 to 7.5 megawatts DC, and it converts to 5 megawatts AC.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good to remember that difference.
Yep.
So you've carved out, so in other words, you would be planning to use almost the entire 30 acres that's carved out there.
That's correct.
I was hoping that there would be a little bit of room that you wouldn't need, just because, well, I see that most of the wooded area is just new growth since the plant closed down. So there's like this 30-year young pine oak forest maybe, with a bunch of smaller invasive trees in there as well, it looks like. There do seem to be a few older, grander forest sections, such as near the Concord border, north of the Concord solar installation. And it looks like there's a little separate, taller section quite close to the train tracks. And I guess a comment would be any efforts you can make to not use those parts would be helpful in creating a case for the positive environmental stewardship of the project.
So I think that's more for a Grace question, and then we can get to the solar execution to the folks that'll actually be doing it. We did, and I think, you know, our biggest struggle is also when we look at our needs for access, and when we actually look at the concentration of the monitoring wells that are still in the open area, it would be a struggle to get the scale of the solar into that area and still give us the required access to the wells. So that was the first struggle. And then also on the landfill, you know, there's a slope to it. So we've got the developable flat area that then, you know, that I think we could get a few acres out of, but it was going to complicate the matter. So at least the first view was, where can we get it to work? And I think, you know, ultimately, from when we look at the remaining trees on the site, specifically like in the pond and wetland area, I mean, those are areas that we have no plans to look to develop. So we still feel like there's still a lot of wooded areas that are going to be preserved on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And then just similar to the conservation area on the north, right? There are still things that we're trying to develop where we can to still make successful development, but then at the same time understanding that there are certain areas that, you know, we know are going to stay there and untouched.
Okay, I don't need to go deeper into that. I mean, I know this is going to be an issue with the planning board, not with the Board of Selectmen, about, you know, removing more than an acre of trees. Normally just requires a special permit from the planning board, but I just wanted to explore that.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I only had one more really solar question, then a couple of water questions, which was in terms of operations and maintenance on this thing. To what extent would you be planning to use herbicides or pesticides on the solar farm to keep vegetation in check?
So generally speaking, the answer is especially on a site that has an environmental as an existing environmental issue, we've generally not used any pesticides or herbicides, partially because it'd be hard if we were to create a problem. You know, it'd be hard to know whose problem it was, and we have no interest in creating a problem in a site like this. Our expectation is we would not use herbicides or pesticides.
Thank you. I'm sure people will be tracking that as things go further. Because I just want to agree with Joan that this is a wonderful idea. You know, I used to be president of Green Acton, which is sort of the successor organization to ACES, which was sort of bird dogging the cleanup process here for a couple of decades. And it just seems, it does seem a wonderful conclusion to the story, to go from all the environmental damage to something that does so much environmental good. So I just want to say I'm a fan. Let's see. Then I had some water questions here. Can you remind us approximately where the zone 1, 2, and 3 wellhead protection areas are on the map, and where the town wells are that had to be closed down because of the contamination from the site?
I actually do not have that information. But if we can add that to the list, I have no problem updating this and
Great.
Putting it on here.
Okay. Yeah, I just took a brief look, and it looks like there are wellhead areas 1, 2, and 3 within that picture that you showed us. But it would just be sort of good for everyone to know where they were.
We definitely know that there are wells in the solar area. It's
Right.
we had to try to look at where the lowest density was for development.
I think the last question was about the north area, and I know that's not your main purpose here, but I was just wondering if you had heard of there's our local Metropolitan Area Planning Council, the MAPC, and there's the Transportation Division has a wonderful vision, which they're calling Landline, which is a web of connected bike access ways, including along existing roads or new bikeways. And the planners noted that a wonderful connection would be possible from the end of River Street through the land north of the tracks to an existing protected area in West Concord, just over the active line that connects with the road system there. So I guess I was wondering if you'd ever heard of that, and would you be open to eventually have discussions sometime about allowing that connection to go through your north parcel?
I have not heard of it, but I think, I mean, if you could speak to John, our discussions, even as far as looking at the north and looking at getting some sidewalks put in, we want to be as collaborative as possible. And I think if you would, I can't visualize it, so I don't know what connection points you're referring to. But I think, ultimately, if it doesn't really conflict with some of the ideas that were presented to us about a year ago as potential uses, and again, those potential uses might be different after the pandemic, so we might, we're going to revisit and kind of click the refresh button and see if what we thought going into this year is still the same going into the next couple of years. But we have no problem entertaining ideas to try to, again, we're knowing that Grace is, we're trying to make this a good positive chapter for everybody to move forward. If there are simple things like that we could evaluate, we're open to.
Okay, well, there's a lot of work to do on our end, but we'll be in touch. Thanks. That was it for me.
Okay. Any other questions for David? So, John and David, what would you envision the next steps to be?
So I think. Oh, go ahead, David.
John.
So tonight was just meant to be a preview for the board of where Grace is and what they've been thinking about, and to make sure that you understand what's being proposed in terms of the solar, and then Grace would work with its development team to do the necessary steps and come meet with our permitting boards to do what they need to do to advance the project. But this is, the board doesn't have necessarily an approval process for this right now. It's just meant to be a way to get you in the loop and give opportunity for you to give feedback to David and his team as they move forward with what they're looking to do out here.
Hey,
So
David.
John, Franny Osmond has her hand up.
Sure, Franny, please.
Hi, this is Franny Osmond from West Acton. I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. And one of my questions Jim posed was about the possibility of extending the landline through there. And I put into the chat, which only the panelists see, a description of what the landline was. Jim described it a little, but I thought I would just say it for everybody else. The landline would include consistent and clear signage throughout the network, meaning a bicycle and pedestrian network in this whole area. This is from the MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And it would bring trail access within a mile of where 92% of the region's residents live. Mass Trails places particular emphasis on expanding and connecting existing trails, exactly what the landline is trying to achieve. Mass Trails is MassDOT, and landline, I don't know if it's being organized by MAPC, but they seem to always come to the meetings and support it. So I just wanted to second that interest in having a connection, because it's very hard to make the connection between the Assabet River Rail Trail and West Concord. And so this would really help. The second question I have is on the Transportation Advisory Committee, people have over the years pointed to the W.R. Grace land right across from River Street, which probably is just north of this map, as a place for parking because the Maynard for the train. Now I know it's hard to get into this mindset now when you look at the big empty parking lot, but it will come back, and we will have a parking crunch again. And the Maynard shuttle goes right up Parker Street there, and it would be a perfect place to have an auxiliary lot. And I'm not sure how the open space requirements for this land, I don't know what the situation is at all, but I would like to put in a request for that to be considered for that part of the WR Gray site.
That specifically did not come up when we had our real estate firm looking at kind of the highest and best uses based on the area at the time. But again, we're open to review anything.
Okay.
And I think once we, again, once we settle on, we want to, obviously, we're closer on the south because we know it makes the most sense just from our ongoing requirements here.
Right.
And we think it's the cleanest step. And then when we get to the north, I think we're always open to look at anything.
Okay.
But obviously can't make promises to if that's the chosen path.
Okay.
David, Freddie, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this was answered. Kim Castens had a question. What was the have any plans developed yet for the remaining acres on the south side parcel? Yeah, I think about 46 would go to the solar farm. The other 85, 90.
So, and again, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving on the map. When I really look at the remaining half, kind of in the bottom left, the kind of the sinking pond and the wetlands, there are no plans to develop this. We're not looking at this site at all, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know if that would ever catch the interest of Grace to even approach developing it. At the top side, ultimately when we first came into this, we said, oh, maybe we could do solar throughout the entire expanse. But knowing the monitoring that we have to do and the concentration of wells, actually, that right before this meeting, I was shown the map. I don't know if we haven't given any thoughts. We really are focusing on the solar kind of closes out the south. We have not looked at anything further. And really, when the solar moves on and makes progress, we would turn to the north as the primary. And I don't know if we would really continue to refine and try to get every corner out of the site, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from board members? Franny has a question. Does Grace still own and pay taxes on this land? They do.
We do, and we're going to own the south throughout the entire duration. So the solar, it's actually going to be on a lease. So we're going to own the site. We still own the liability. We still pay the taxes, and that that's just it makes the most sense given our ongoing obligations there.
Okay. Anything else from board members or
Two more people with their hands up, John. There are two more people with their hands
Sure,
up.
please. Yeah.
Richard Kelleher is next.
Hello. I'm sorry, I just joined a few minutes ago, and I apologize, but I'm wondering if there's any plans to set up a citizen committee like Concord did for NMI to work on planning. They might brought up the thought was that where the old comments that there were no thoughts of what to do with it, and also the north side, it would be probably useful to have a citizen committee, have a brainstorming sessions, that kind of thing.
So I think, and again, in the south, our number one goal for the south is to ensure that we can continue to do the work that we need to do from an EPA monitoring perspective. So in the areas where there's a high concentration of wells, we're not going to be putting forth a lot of energy to try to figure out new ways to develop it that might complicate that ongoing responsibility. On the north, I do think, I don't know if we're going to look at what's the highest and best use for it. And I think at that point, we would pursue the zoning and permitting process as whatever plans we eventually decide on, that we would run through a similar course where we come and talk about what the plans are and advance the discussions that way.
My thought was addressed to the board, whether the board would want to be proactive so that we would have some ideas what the town would rather see, which obviously would go to you as the owner, but it would sort of inform, it's not now, but it takes time to do that process. So that's my comment was addressed to the board.
Sorry.
Are there any thoughts from board members on Rich Kelleher's suggestion?
Sure.
Jim?
I think it probably is a good idea to do that. However, an important difference is that in the NMI site, the ownership is ending up in the hands of the town of Concord. So they had a direct and important interest in figuring out what to do with the site since they were going to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard anybody yet in the town raise their hand and say, what would be a good idea is if we owned that land. Now that might change. For example, with Franny's idea about, well, not just Franny's, the idea of the TAC and others to, create like auxiliary parking and stuff. There might eventually need to be an ownership interest there. But yeah, I think for now, to me, it's an interesting exercise to try to understand what we'd like to have happen there. But unfortunately, or fortunately, it's already zoned. It's Technology District 1. The allowed uses there are fairly clear. The requirements for ongoing cleanup that have been mentioned are also very, very clear. So right now, there's not a lot of slack, which could change in the future.
Thank you.
Other questions? Claire Siska had a question that was up on the screen. Might we be able to pull that up?
Sure, I can read that if that's helpful.
Sure.
Sorry, how safe is the property overall for humans? Is it okay, for example, to take a walk on Independence Way?
Again, I'm not going to make any environmental statements only because I'm not from the environmental team. And I think that any public statements on that should be conducted through our environmental organization as well as the EPA. I think, but all I can say is that there was extensive remediation done to the site with the clear intention to make it a lot cleaner and healthier than it has.
Yeah, and also, Claire, it's private land that's marked, so you're not actually welcome there at this point in time. Not to say that lots of people haven't been there. But
David, are there any further audience participants?
No, John, that's it.
Okay, so David and your team, thank you very much. I would like to, we have one main item left, which I take it will go on for a while, which would be the dog park presentation and recommendation. So if we could just move to the 2 consent items and then take a 5-minute break and then get back. So consent items, number 8, committee appointment of Catherine Yusoff, Associate Member, Economic Development Committee, term to expire June 30, 2023. Number 9, accept gift from the Recreation Department for $200 for Emma Cunningham for funding a new recreational facility and playground at Jones Field. Do I have a motion to approve consent items 8 and 9?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? So David, if you call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
I also say aye. So
Okay, so let's just take a 5-minute break. It's 8:30 now. We'll be back at 8:35.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're all here? We're just waiting for John's back. Okay, so this would be our last item. It's number 7, Acton Dog Park Committee presentation and recommendations for dog park location. So, Joan, if you would start, and then Tom Gillespie will be presenting on the dog park. We had asked him to look at 4 possible sites for the park for him to review and update us as to their viability. So if we could then hear from Tom, we could have our discussion. We may choose to narrow down some of those sites before we take public comment, and then see if we could come to a recommendation on a site. So let's begin with Joan then.
All right, the Acton Dog Park Committee has been hard at work for over 3 years. They've identified a source of funding, and we've looked at, I think, almost 10 sites across the town, and there is a recommendation at this point. But I would like to thank all the members of the dog park who've put in extraordinary hours, not only at meetings, but walking around the town and looking at these various sites. And I think they've done an excellent job.
Okay, Tom?
All right, thank you. I will go ahead and start some screen sharing here. And I hope that's something you can all see the header slide with the presentation date.
Yes.
All right, good. So first of all, let me start by saying thank you again for your continued leadership and support in helping us bring a suitable dog park to our town. I also wanted to mention that we had provided a report to all committee members back about 2 weeks ago on 10/5. There's a fair bit more of detail in that report, and it's also in the meeting materials, but I just wanted to summarize things from that report. But of course, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to dig into that or refer to it. So just a reminder, first of all, of, okay, why is this not moving? Wow, that took a little while. All right, a reminder of the key criteria that we are using for selecting a site. We've been over some of these before. They should be fairly familiar in terms of size, considerations around terrain and drainage, shade. Some of these are actually criteria specified in a sense by the Stanton Foundation, which we expect to be our primary source of funding. They don't like parks to be in certain states or conditions. They prefer them in other things. And so a lot of these, again, are following their guidelines. A number of these also came from our community outreach and surveys that we did and people that we talked to at Oktoberfest and everything else. So this is sort of the list, and this is what we were using in each of the cases to do some evaluation of not only the previous sites, as Joan mentioned, but now the 4 that we're looking at tonight. And then in terms of, it needs to be a municipal property so that the Stanton grant can be utilized. And then we did significant community outreach that I mentioned, including a survey that said it was over 600 respondents who said 63% would take advantage of the dog park and 76% would support the creation, with active social media involving over 400 contacts on an active Facebook page and website. So we feel that there was all of these going into the selection process. The final 4, sounds like a basketball thing, is coming from the meeting that we had with you back in September. I won't spend as much time on Morrison Farm and School Street Fields because frankly, we found some cons that are almost virtually showstoppers, but I will hit each of those. Then 70 Quarry Road, and then finally the 2 parcels at Main Street. They all follow pretty much the same format in terms of some pros and cons. Each one pretty much has only one slide, so hopefully I'll keep this moving. In terms of Morrison Farm, and you can see a little picture. I hope that that's viewable on your screen just to give some orientation. The yellow outline is the actual entire property, so that is not what we would do for a dog park. That is that entire municipally owned property. So it's got a great central location, good access, being used even more so now with the rail trail. And the meadow and the various facilities have very reasonable access and access that could be improved. However, as we worked and looked at this further, including some walks with Tom Tidman and also Selby, it was really hard to find a workable location of an appropriate size that met the criteria. There are things like vernal pools and wetlands and other things, of course, because it's a pond. And while there was a clear section, sometimes referred to as the meadow, there would be a pretty significant impact because of the various other conditions. We found that there have been a number of fairly vocal objections and concerns about using that, and also the Open Space Committee is not particularly in favor of a Morrison Farm site selection. Also, we do need potable water, or at least dog drinkable water, as part of the Stanton Foundation requirement, and the community garden folks report that the well that was added recently has been a huge help, but sometimes starts to run a little thin when there's a number of users, and so they really worry about continuing to drain for the dog park. So, John, do you want me to pause on each particular site, or do you want questions at the end?
Why don't you just do the presentation, and then we'll take questions and comments from the board.
Okay, very good, thank you. So next is the School Street Fields. Again, you can see the little outline, the yellow being the entire property. The part in green is the current part that you see with grass, etc. Great size, very open, definitely meets the criteria, fairly reasonable street access, even with the Route 2 proximity. However, as we started looking into this, it is not currently a municipal property. It is on loan, lease from the Mass Department of whatever. And we did contact Stanton, who said, well, yeah, we'd consider that if you could get a 99+ year lease. As we took a look at the things involved in getting that kind of lease, we realized that the current 10-year lease took us 7 years to obtain. So the prospect for getting a 99-year lease, especially in light of stresses on the government and folks at this point, looked increasingly dim. There is some conflict in terms of current recreation use, and so that would be a consideration, I think, as well. The Water District reached out to Selby and expressed some concern about the adjacent town well. One of our primary wells is near that, and it's already under an agricultural restriction in terms of a distance, so that agricultural chemicals, etc., can't pollute the water, and so there might be some concern about drainage things, etc. So you can see that things really stacked up fast, sort of against the School Street consideration. It was great to look at it, so we're always happy to keep going. Brings us to 70 Quarry Road up by Nara. Has a great proximity to the Nara Recreation, has a lot of draws in that it would be centrally located like that. There's already existing parking, and stuff could be augmented, similar to what the pump track folks have talked about augmenting in terms of Quarry Road, side of the road parking. There is a much reduced set of neighbor proximity, although there is some. We would have to do a substantial amount of tree clearing. Again, that comes from a Stanton requirement where the dog park can't be like a forest. It can have a few trees, but we would need to do some pretty substantial clearing. The Land Stewardship Committee is not in favor of this site, primarily because of the environmental impact. With the pump track wonderfully being able to use a portion of 70 Quarry Road, it does start to reduce the size of what's available for a dog park, really to below the criteria. We would be practically, given the landscaping and the topology and avoiding some of the vernal pools, etc., we probably would be under the 1 acre that we considered a minimum for a dog park size. So we're thrilled that the pump track is going to be able to use that, but it does have an effect on what we might do for a dog park in that area. And then again, the environmental impact from the trees. So that brings us to the 348 and 352 Main Street parcels. The diagram on the left shows you those two different parcels. Again, these are outlines of the properties, not outlines of a dog park, etc. So I may from time to time refer to 348, which is the lower parcel on Main Street, and then 352 being the upper parcel. So bear with me 1 second while I move the screen out of the way here. All right. Some parking will be built on the 352 Main Street parcel, located right off of Isaac Davis Way. You can see that sort of in the upper left-hand corner of that image on the left. Just as an update, in an email to the town manager, the town council has confirmed that access from Main Street to a small parking lot that would be in that 352 property, utilizing the portion of Isaac Davis Way that connects to 27, is permitted as part of the 2011 release that governs the use of Isaac Davis Way. Parking will be small. We already know that 10 to 12 spots is a good number. We've vetted that with other towns and even statistics that Stanton has about dog parks, etc. So let me repeat, the parking lot that we need is about 10 to 12 cars. No other numbers under consideration. We really don't think it needs to be any larger. We don't expect to suddenly say, well, we think we're going to need 30 now. We've vetted this number and it appears to be a good number. And just sort of by way of contrast, the AHA parking plan for the wonderful AHA project just up 27 from this diagram will be about 36 spots. So almost, the dog park will be about 1/3 the size of what's up for AHA. We've asked towns, surrounding towns, about traffic impact when they've built their dog parks, and none of them really had any concerns or issues. They said that generally the peak use is on the times that you might expect, and we figure that the peak use, Saturday mornings, later in the day, will probably fill up or close to fill up those 10 to 12 spots. And so additional parking will only need to be found occasionally, certainly not daytime and other times when I think the 10 to 12 will meet the need very well. And so with the central location, many dog park users will also be able to walk instead of drive, and as we're planning to include some sidewalk improvements there as well. So if we start going through the various pros associated with these two parcels, definitely fits the size, and the terrain is quite amenable. We've gotten a considerable amount of support from the Acton community. Perhaps there'll be some supporters speaking tonight. We have received endorsements from the committees that we reached out to and communicated with. It is an undeveloped space. This will be a good usage. The parcel on which the dog park will be located will also be we anticipate a site of the future septic field for the Acton Housing Authority project. And so assuming the septic system goes in there, that also places a limit on what else you could do with that property. Certainly no, buildings or other structures, etc. So we feel that that's a compatible usage of that plan. The town continues to retain control over these. They are municipal properties, and that works perfectly with the Stanton grant requirements. We do feel that the proximity to the AHA project is a win-win, and the access is good. Nice view from Route 2 as you're coming off those exits. Will be suitable both for vehicle access and also, again, sidewalk access as we work to improve some of that. Town water should be available without a huge expense in order to meet, again, the Stanton requirement. It's cleared. There isn't any environmental impact, at least for using the surface. We've got some sketches that we've done. One of them you saw, and that would get us, a leg up in terms of the next step of design work, etc. And we do anticipate working on a way to bring some walking trails outside of the enclosed dog park to provide some additional recreational space used for the AHA residents or whatever. So we haven't fully designed that. You know, we're not at that site, not at that step yet until we have a site, but we do have some ideas about how we can bring some of these additional, features, I guess, to this property. So in terms of cons, Isaac Davis Way neighbors have expressed some objections. We've reached out on several occasions to understand, listen, work together. I'm sure that will be more of a discussion this evening as well. The co-use of the septic system could be a con if there was, a technical reason for the two not being able to coexist. So we checked with the Board of Health, and they've provided positive guidance in terms of sharing and that use. Traffic safety, it is a busy road. We know that. There are some mitigations that we might be able to bring to bear. Again, usage will be at various times. So we don't think there's going to be a traffic safety issue constantly all the time. But yes, it's a busy street, and we will just have to all work together to make sure that it's kept safe and that users recognize and learn how to enter and exit appropriately. Some of the other sites that we considered that I mentioned do have direct access to town trails, which is always nice to, take the pooch on a leash after some time in the dog park. But this one does not have any access to town trails. All right, so that brings us to the dog park committee's recommendation. Because of based on our vetting of these sites, the research we've done. Thank you, Joan, for the recognition for the time we've put in. And there were chairs and leaders prior to me, so it has been a very much a team effort. But at this point, we really concluded and are recommending that 348 and 352 Main Street site really is going to work the best for all the reasons that we mentioned and that we'll probably continue to discuss tonight. We also, really feel strongly about the fact that there's a unique aspect to this of revitalizing and reclaiming what now is, a pretty unattractive piece, etc. And so that will be, an extra benefit associated with selecting of these sites. All right.
And Tom, it's across the street from the vet and the police station.
Yes, thank you, John. Yes. So when we thought about possible outcomes for tonight, we don't want to obviously, dictate anything at all, of course, to the board, but it helped us to sort of organize where we might go given these sites and our recommendation. So there could be an out approval, which would be great. We could understand a vote that took the site and the solution to finding the septic needs, the easement under Isaac Davis Way under consideration and essentially being a contingency upon finding that solution. Some of the things that we really sort of don't hope will happen tonight would be a vote that also includes a requirement for bringing this to town meeting, and I'll have a word about that in just a second. And of course, we could vote to continue to postpone or just decide that we just can't accomplish this project for the town. And so when it comes to requiring a vote at next year's town meeting, if you allow me to just mention that there would have a pretty significant impact on the schedule and would bring a delay of 7 months or more given the town meeting has moved, etc. And we're still a little bit puzzled why that's an important requirement as part of this whole process. We refer back to the fact that the town meeting has already voted very overwhelmingly to select to give the Board of Selectmen the authority and control over these parcels as part of that vote when the AHA project was again so overwhelmingly approved. The recent endorsement of the pump track, which was awesome, we're really glad to see that, sort of went ahead and didn't really include a discussion about the necessity of bringing that to a town meeting vote. Tonight's meeting has been widely publicized in many public forums, and so tonight's meeting, I think, is also a significant chance for public feedback and input. So then I wanted to briefly, after having talked to John, very quickly, just acknowledge a couple of the concerns that have been raised in the past and our thinking on that. And I promise this is just a couple paragraphs, so I will work through this as quickly as I can. We certainly want to acknowledge there has been concern expressed about somehow having a dog park in this location resulting in increased liability for the Isaac Davis Way neighbors. And I'll speak more to this, in a bit. Sorry, I've got to find the cursor here. Bear with me one second. Okay, so I'd like to quickly review some of those. And so seem to be the primary concern at this time. Forgive me for losing my place in the slides. So while the pre-meeting document that we sent to the board on 10/5 has a bit more details, I'll summarize our thinking about the liability concern at this point in preparation for future discussion, probably tonight. First, since the errant and problematic traffic on the private part of Isaac Davis Way happens already today, neighbors have reported that unpleasant situation, and we get it, we're sympathetic, that can't be fun for the neighbors. But there's been no hard evidence presented about why that errant traffic will get any worse with a dog park. As a committee, we are committed to keeping any dog park traffic off of the private roadway, and we take that responsibility and concern very seriously. I've noticed that funds for the dog park construction, for instance, could easily be used to improve any signage or any other method that the neighbors think would help mitigate and reduce and then hopefully eliminate some of the improper traffic on the private portion of Isaac Davis Way. And again, we'd love to hear some suggestions associated with that. The signs and the rules that we post at the clear that the northern part of Isaac Davis Way is a private road and is never to be used by dog park vehicles or foot traffic, and that in fact doing so would be trespassing. We were thinking that perhaps after the opening of the dog park initially, we could request an increase in police patrols or monitoring of any improper use of Isaac Davis Way. Not so much to issue citations, but just to help educate folks for what they will want to do in terms of the right thing. There was a recent concern expressed also about the septic plan. As I mentioned, since the 348 Main Street, that upper parcel is going to be used, the lower parcel is likely to be used for the septic system in a leach field, but there will be no vehicle traffic over that since parking will be built on the 352, that upper parcel. And the Acton Board of Health again has confirmed that it's a suitable use for both. So we've checked with Town Resources that know a thing or two about septic systems, and they have no concerns about people and dogs walking over the planned septic system. The AHA project manager and architects have been made aware of the dog park plans and have said in meetings, quote, "We can work with that." Another concern about adding the small parking lot to the 352 Main Street was safety and security and a likely graffiti blight. Acton's police chief has been consulted about these concerns, and he has expressed no concerns whatsoever. Again, Town Resources that know a thing or two about safety and graffiti have no concerns. And let's not forget, as Joe mentioned, that this location is almost immediately across the street from the public safety facility. And then I mentioned lastly that, and I'll reinforce the Town Council's email associated with the ability to use that upper 352 parcel for the small parking lot. We've previously addressed some of the other concerns that neighbors, again, have previously expressed, such as barking and odor and traffic and property values. I'm happy to go over those responses again if requested, but it seemed, again, the major concern was associated with liability and also the traffic safety. So that finishes my presentation. I'm happy to, take any questions or help in any way we can.
Thank you, Tom. So to the board members, following on to Tom's presentation, would there be any of the 4 sites we might like to just take off the table now before we begin our discussion and open it up? Dean?
Yeah, I think obviously the School Street site is not viable for many reasons. Obviously, Morrison Farm I don't think is a viable site because there's so many other uses already down there, and the really overwhelming opposition that even the suggestion that we were looking at it for a dog park. What came out of that. So I think that's a non-starter. And frankly, the Quarry Road site, I don't think is particularly viable either. It's a small site. There's a lot of tree clearing that have to take place. It's at the far side of town, and I think it would be nice to have things more central. So I would frankly suggest that those other 3 sites be eliminated early on.
Any other comments? David?
Yeah, I agree completely with what Dean said. Whenever we get there, I do have a couple of questions for Tom.
Okay. Any other comments on the notion of reducing the number of viable sites? Okay, then is there a consensus that we will just focus our discussion and possible recommendation on the Main Street site? So that's all nods and thumbs up. Okay, so let's first open it up to board discussion and questions, and we'll begin with Jim.
Since we're really down to the question of whether to go ahead with the site or to not have a place for a dog park, I guess what I want us to remember is that we create this, if we have the dog site there, we do create some challenges for the AHA, for the project that they're very much excited about and that we are very much excited about. So it'll be incumbent on us to continue to work through staff to help resolve any of those difficulties that come up. I'm in favor of that. That's it, I think, for
now. Well, let's go to Joan next. Is that okay? Joan?
Oh, well, I've been involved in this for 3 years, and I think this is the site that meets the criteria.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for did I miss it in your presentation, Tom, or what are your plans for requesting CPC funding?
So thank you, David. The Stanton grant provides funds for both design and construction, basically up to a 90% level. And so the remainder of those we would be seeking from a CPC grant. I should say a CPA grant. We have confirmed that there's precedent for that. There have been other dog parks that have utilized CPA funds for that purpose. There may also be some need for things like contingencies and a few things, frankly, that Stanton doesn't cover, like benches and stuff like that. So that was our anticipation. We have prepared a preliminary CPA, or in that case, sorry, CPC application, I guess. It's a relatively modest amount, and I think it would fit easily under the recreation category, etc.
Okay, and one more question is there a sequence between the septic leaching field and the dog park? Like, does one have to come first?
We don't have the answer to that because we're not septic people, I guess. So we're glad to see that the AHA is moving forward. That's awesome. Maura, their project manager, and also their architect are firmly in place. lots of experience with this as I've been, staying abreast of those developments. And so we would figure it out with them. And again, I took some stock from the architect's comment about using that for a septic system and indicating a positive to being able to work together. So whether we would, build some fencing and leave it in a way that then it could be opened up for the subsequent leach field development, et cetera, or enough work gets done so a septic design is put in place so that then construction of a dog park could be done in a way that doesn't interfere. I think those are possibilities, but we just don't have solid answers to that right now.
So can I make a couple of comments now?
Please. Yes, please.
I think that this Main Street site is ideal for the dog park. It's just perfect, and I think it's frankly synergistic with the AHA development. I think the residents of the housing development can come to the park, and I think it's interaction for them and things like that. I've said to a few people, my father would like nothing better than sitting on a bench here watching the dog owners come and go. I think, frankly, it removes an eyesore off of Main Street. This lot is pretty ugly. It's ugly before the town cuts the weeds. It's ugly after the town cuts the weeds. It's just a bunch of weeds. And finally, I don't think we need a special town meeting vote for this. If we're going for CPC funding, that'll be an item at town, a consent item at town meeting. If someone wants to hold it and discuss it, we can hold it and discuss it. So anyway, those are my comments.
Dean.
Well, Mr. Martin stole all of my comments. I think, as liaison to CPC, obviously I'm going to be watching this carefully as it comes through the process. CPC has not discussed this at all. My own personal feeling is that this would be an appropriate recreation use. Obviously, with the CPC process, all requests get vetted by council to make sure that they're appropriate. So I think that's important. I agree with David that the CPA vote, which would be required at town meeting whenever that's held, for the appropriation for the dog park will sort of confirm any decision that we might make. We kicked this back and forth a bit. I think my estimate is the CPC would be more comfortable with viewing the application if the board has actually made the decision or has made the recommendation, than if we send Tom in there and say, tell him that it's still up in the air from the board, we're still going to get firm town meeting, and gee, we'd like the money. I think it's a lot cleaner if this board makes some clear indication. Obviously, town meeting is going to rule on this. They can cancel and disapprove the CPC application, which has happened, not often, but it does happen. But I think it does give a good check and balance for the public. Considering that we typically have maybe 300 or 400 people at town meeting, I think probably we've had more than that number of people have already weighed in on this one way or another. So hopefully the folks that feel passionately one way or another are going to be able to say something at town meeting. That's my only comment.
Tom, did you have something? Here's your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And to clarify, if we have board approval of a site, we can start the Stanton grant application process. We would not have to wait for CPC funding to start the grant. But if we don't have a site selected, we're on hold in terms of moving anything with Stanton.
Okay, so that leaves me, and I would recognize I'm in the minority I have some reservations. I wanted to thank the dog park committee for their diligence and perseverance and genuine decency over the last 3+ years in dealing with us and the town. And I absolutely support a dog park. There's 2,000 dogs in town. You know, I've gotten and dog owners have varying views on whether you need a dog park or not. Dog owners have written me, well, we have 22 miles of trails in town. We walk our dogs on the trails, you know, that's fine. What do you need a dog park for? But with anything else in a larger community, there's, you know, variations of opinion, and there's certainly variations of opinion among, you know, dog owners, and, you know, something not necessary, others would be a great addition. You know, my concern has always been, should it be in a recreation area? As you know, the committee diligently, you know, pursued any number of town properties and repeatedly met with, you know, neighborhood opposition and not wanting the park in close proximity. And it just, you know, has struck me that, you know, no one, you know, wants a dog park in their neighborhood or immediate backyard. And so I've always thought we've got to come up with a site that's satisfactory for the use and is least objectionable to the larger community. And, you know, politically, if the question of the dog park goes to town meeting, we don't want it to lose. We want to be enthusiastically behind the site, because if it loses, you know, that may end it for you know, for all time. I understand that we don't have to take the matter to town meeting. It's on a town site. It's town property. We can make the decision, you know, on it tonight, and that would be it, subject to CPC funding for what the Stanton grant requires. But politically, it's been said, in any event, you know, take it to town meeting. Peter Berry was a strong proponent of that position. Nina has suggested to us that that's the practice in other towns that her firm is involved in. My concern, you know, with the Main Street site and being there as recently as Saturday, it's not a relaxing place because of the traffic, the noise, and the, you know, and the motion. On Thursday night, the AHA, I think we got a note on this today, voted 3-0 with one abstention, you know, not to use the Main Street site for a dog at this time. Where I get a little concerned as well is, you know, in a time of equity, you know, we should be doing equity and thinking about equity here. That in the other sites that really never came before us, but the dog park committee heard about it. The large groups of neighbors objected. Here, it's only 4 property owners. So I don't want it to seem like, well, it's only 4, so we could push over them and not you know, think about it. You know, there was one constituent wrote me that we're locating a dog in the Main Street site, locating a dog park next to a new affordable housing development is the height of hypocrisy. We are inviting lower income families to be part of the Acton community, and as a welcoming gift, we are giving them a dog park that no one else wants. That has, you know, it's harsh, but it's, you know, it's not untrue. So those are, you know, my concerns on the site. I would like to hear another round from the 4 abutting families, and particularly hear from Matt Post on the opinion that we got from town council that Isaac Davis Way, the part that runs from their fence to Main Street, is a permissible use. Is people entering the dog park may drive on Isaac Davis Way to the parking space, because I'd want to know tonight if they object to that and if they intend to file a lawsuit over that. So with that, I would just like to hear from the community. Let's open it up, David, please.
Okay. The first person on the list is Amy Barber.
Hi, I'm Amy Barber. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My family and I live on Main Street. We're directly across from the public safety building. We have a backyard, but we don't have a neighborhood feel. So we take our dogs for walks on the trail, and we also take our dogs for walks in the neighborhood. We would certainly welcome the use of a dog park to bring our dogs to. So we've been taking them to a dog park in Chelmsford, and what I thought was very interesting was what David mentioned about his father enjoying the experience of sitting on a bench and watching the dog.
You're breaking up on us, Amy.
In Chelmsford is by bridging a lot of currently socially dinner dogs who would not necessarily now. Hello?
Yeah, you were breaking up on us. Hello.
I apologize. What I was saying was the interaction with seniors at a dog park is wonderful because they may not be able to utilize trails, and it's been a nice exchange of interaction with an older community, and we may be the only people a senior group talks to at a dog park. I've also walked down the Isaac Davis Way with my dogs and was told by one of the residents that I was not welcome there. And I said to him, I'm your neighbor. And he said, well, this is a private road, so I've never gone down there again. It is quite boarded up where I do not feel that cars would park or people would even consider walking through. I just don't see that being an issue. Another thing is I've spent enough time at a dog park that the dogs play, but they don't sit there barking. What I've noticed is that the dogs socialize, the people socialize, and they leave. They're there maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and then they leave. So the volume is not an issue, but the interaction between people, I think, is wonderful. So I'm in all support for the dog park at the Main Street location.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the next person in just a second, but some person is just labeled Chromebook. If you could put your name in the chat, I can call on you. Right now, Franny Osmond.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very much in favor of this spot. There are things that I don't love. I don't love that it's on a main road, but compared to some of the difficulties in other spots, this seems great. And as I mentioned before, I'm the chair of TAC, and we did endorse it. And we also heard about it on the Commission on Disabilities. And my memory is that people seemed positive about it. A dog park, as people said, really reduces isolation. It allows people who don't drive, who don't walk in the woods and can't run around with their dog, let their dog get exercise while they're there, and the meeting people. I'm just checking my notes. A good thing about this site is that it's right on the bus line for when the cat bus starts up again, or even other vehicles. I mean, it's a very common place and easy for the public transportation to bring someone. And I would note that we really have to make it okay for people to bring their dogs who don't drive and want to use the van to be able to go places with their dogs. I think that's very important. I think we need to make it easy enough for a van to turn around in. And I would like to say to Tom, I had said, I had requested attention being made to having parking available for people with disabilities or who can't walk from a separate lot down a curvy path to the thing, that there be some spots available right at the gazebo. I just wanted to keep that in there. Okay, thank you. I see your thumb. And I don't see the dog park as something no one else wants. I've seen dog parks adored in other places and people really enjoying them. So I'm sort of proud of us putting it in. And I love the combination of the senior or the Acton Housing Authority housing along with it. Thanks. That's all.
Amy Austin?
Good evening. Actually, it's Ronald Albuquerque, Amy Austin's husband.
No, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. So I'm at 12 Isaac Davis Way. I've been here on Isaac Davis Way for coming on 25 years. Just want to mention like a couple of things, okay? The 2011 agreement, I was heavily involved in all those negotiations with Walker Realty, where at the conclusion of that, Walker did terminate, the access rights for 352 Main Street to Isaac Davis Way were terminated, okay? And there was a comment made earlier that there's a northern part of Isaac Davis Way that's private, which implies that the southern part's public, and that's actually not the case, okay? I just want to make that clear. The entire way is private. For those on the call who don't know Isaac Davis Way, it's a one-lane private way, driveway effectively. We have a common driveway agreement. So just think of it as a long driveway, as opposed to, I've heard the word road being used, and that's inaccurate. It's basically like a driveway. So there was someone who said they walked down and was hanging out there. Imagine if I was in your driveway. I'm not sure you would necessarily like it. Then the other point I want to make is there was, just as regards the access, right? I'll point everyone to the 2018 RFI that the town issued in October 2018. So just 2 years ago, actually, for the development of the Main Street parcels. I'll direct you to page 6 of that RFI, which says that Isaac Davis Way is a private right-of-way with no vehicular access to Main Street. So I guess in summary, right, there's obviously a point of difference here, and I want to just make sure that that's clear. And the dog park plans that we've seen sort of take in Isaac Davis Way as part of it, and it's not as cut and dry. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Corcoran?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm speaking now as chair of the Commission on Disabilities that heard 3 times over the course of the 3 years that the Dog Park Committee was working on trying to find an equitable site. And they gave it their best possible shot. I think there are ways that we can mitigate the use of Isaac Davis Way, you know, entrance only to residents. There's certain ways the signage can help. But for the dog park itself, for the ability for seniors and the disabled community to enjoy watching what many of them have as life companions. They are in isolation at home, and this would give them an opportunity to see other people and enjoy their dogs, enjoying themselves. Also, many people who have dogs do not have the ability to walk long distances. So being, as we have many trails that folks can walk on, I'm not thinking that the disabled community with these life companions would be able to access that. So this is some point to consider that weighing in the balance, what is the greater good, and we have to think while we work very, very hard for many things that enable seniors and the disabled, I think that those interactions with their animal is crucially important. And so we support this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Chad Post?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this has been a bit of a process. You know, Isaac Davis Way, us in the neighborhood, we've actually been working for a little over 10 years to keep our road private. And it is exactly that, it's a private road. I reiterate what Ronnie had said earlier, that you know, you can't turn a portion of a private road into a public road. You know, we had submitted months ago 20 reasons why this project was not going to be appropriate. We had a signed petition by 6 of the abutting neighbors, not just 4, but 6. And, you know, we had bought into the Housing Authority project the way it was presented to us as a beautiful buildings on one side and a park on the other. It did not include a dog park, and it did not include, you know, upheaval to our residences. You know, I understand that people say you can put signs up. We have signs up, and they're ignored daily. You know, it's speaking to the woman who had walked her dog down the street. I did ask her why she was on the street. She told me it was a neighbor, and I said, well, you actually have access to use the road if you'd like to then. I was being very nice to her. Part of what I see happening here is that we're just getting pushed along, and we've got some very real concerns. I mean, one of the biggest concerns we have is you're talking about a section of Isaac Davis Way right off of Main Street, and the town does not have ownership of that piece. So let's say somebody slips and falls there and they don't have insurance and they decide to sue somebody, and they say, well, we're going to sue the town of Acton because, well, they've got the biggest pockets. The town of Acton turns around and says, well, you can't really sue us because we don't own the road. So now they're going to turn around and sue the 4 people on Isaac Davis Way. And that is a clear and true liability that we are not willing to take. I've been in the insurance business for 20 years. I see it happening all the time. People are very litigious, and it's something that you cannot avoid. If the town is willing to say, if that happens, Mr. Post, we will assume all liability, you know, we'll talk to you about it. But I don't think the town's willing to do that. You know, one of the other issues that has come up is traffic. There was traffic studies done when Walker was trying to put this school in there. And that area of town failed, like literally got an F for traffic. It's too heavy, mornings, afternoons, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. You're looking at adding at least 36 more cars in and out of the housing authority, and you want to add 15 more cars in and out of this dog park. You know, it really is something that you have to think about is from a town planning standpoint. I don't know how you think that adding more and more and more to that section, which has failed miserably, is a responsible reaction for the board. A couple of points for the criteria of the dog park. It's not supposed to be in a dense residential area. The dog park is actually being put on literally a residentially zoned land. So now your town's going to have to reconfigure that. The parking lot, you really don't have access. So you're now going to have to build a whole new street to get access to your parking lot. And the environmental impact, there's absolutely an impact on the septic system. So we had this talk at the Housing Authority meeting the other night. If you want to put a parking lot on top of the septic tank itself, all right, that's a burden that's going to affect the system eventually. So I don't think it can take the weight of that on a regular basis. And if you're going to be putting the dog park down below where the leaching fields are, I mean, you're packing that land down. It's getting packed down to the point where it can't breathe and do its job. So does the Housing Authority want to take into consideration that they're going to have to redo their septic every 10, 20 years or something like that? I mean, that's a cost that they I don't think that they should be taking on. The other thing is, you know, the Narrow Park I thought was a better location. I'm not opposed to a dog park, but I thought Narrow Park was a good location. And you got to really think about this. The cost of taking down some trees, as opposed to the cost of sidewalks, you know, driveways, you know, all of the things that they want to put into the dog park down there. And, you know, to your point, Mr. Benson, you know, we're not afraid to fight this. So to answer your question, we'd be more than happy to keep moving on this position. You know, and I don't want to get in the way of the Housing Authority. We have a great relationship. I think that they're doing a great job. I've said that 100 times. My neighbors have said that 100 times. I just don't think that this location is appropriate. And I personally, and I know that my neighbors feel the same way, they'll all be speaking. I know that we all also agree that there's no reason why we should have to be inconvenienced, okay, legally and financially for this. It doesn't make sense. It's not fair to being an Acton resident. You know, I think that the bridge, I think you're ignoring our legitimate legal financial concerns. And I think that at this point, you know, bring it to town meeting if that's what you're going to do. Because I don't think that a lot of the residents, if you were to say, hey, what if we were to do this to you, you know, would be so, you know, carefree and say, yeah, this is a great thing to do. It's a great place to be. Love to have it next to my house. I don't think that would happen. And the last point I want to make is, if you are going to vote tonight on anything, I wish, and I ask, you know, with all politeness, that Joan be recused or be abstained from voting. And I say that because she's been on the board for 3 years. She's got a conflict of interest in this, and I don't think it's appropriate that she has a position one way or another on it. That's pretty much all I have to say at this point. Well, maybe I have one more thing. So I think that the town also, you're making a huge decision on something that's going to cost, you've got a $250,000 Stanton grant, okay? That's only going to pay for just the dog park. So the dog park gets put in, and then the rest of what everybody is saying is an ugly hill of grass, okay, is going to be left alone for years until the town decides that they're going to put the money into making that a park. So you've only got plan A done, but you haven't even thought about plan B yet, or even how you're going to pay for that. So to make a responsible decision on this, you really need to look at the cost for the Main Street location, look at the cost for the Nara Park location, and look at the cost for the Morrison Farm location, and see which one is more viable financially. This dog park is an extravagance. It is an extravagance for this town. It's not something that we absolutely need to have to operate. So, let's talk about this in business terms instead of, I would love a place to go and watch my dog run around while I talk to people. So, that's kind of where I'm at with this. I'm sure my neighbors will voice in as well, but please consider all of those.
Matt, just one comment. There's no conflict of interest between Joan's role as a liaison and as a member of the select board in voting tonight. She has no economic or pecuniary interest in the site, the location of the dog park, so she will vote tonight.
Okay, I just thought I'd put it out there.
So next, please.
Yep. Michael Graffio.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. This is Mike Graffio. In one capacity, I've worked with Tom as we've looked at sites in the role around the pump track. And speaking tonight on sort of two accounts. Number one, I have been in dialogue with the folks in the dog park process for a long time, and been following it carefully. It's an area that is important to a lot of people in this community. There's a great deal of overlap between the dog-loving population of Acton and the folks who are involved in mountain biking in the town of Acton. And I can say, without any hesitation, that this is not a frivolous nice to have. That the hard work of Tom and the committee over the last several years is not on something that's just a whimsical, maybe it would be nice. This is something that means something to an awful lot of people. Their hard work is absolutely seen and valued, and I think it is something that you hear tonight from a lot of folks who really do care about this. I hope that the board is able to keep that in mind. And I want to say in no uncertain terms that this is a really, really terrific site. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, if you were to make a list of the best possible sites for something like this would check an awful lot of boxes. It may not be perfect. No site ever will be. That's the practical reality of life. But this is a really, really good site for an awful lot of reasons. And so for that reason, I speak up in support of their efforts and in support of that site. I also just want to say I just strongly hope that the board continues to rely on logic as opposed to slippery slope fallacies, and that the board chooses to see thinly veiled threats for what they are, which is what I think I've heard tonight, and I don't know that really has a place in this process. Thank you.
Fred King.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So for full disclosure, I am a member of the Acton Dog Park Committee, and I want to just say that our research showed that communities that had a dog park really considered them an asset to the community, and actually found that their property values increased because people thought about having a dog park as an asset to the community. So that is something that I think the board should consider. The other one is me as an individual resident of Acton. About 9 years ago, my wife and I adopted a rescue dog. And after we had adopted it, we found out that it was very cautious around people and it needed quite a bit of socialization. So we looked around Acton to find a dog park and didn't find one. Walking on trails doesn't really solve the problem of socializing a dog. You have to have them in a group of dogs. So we took our dog over to Emerson Fields in Concord. And in the morning when I go, about 9 o'clock, There is normally somewhere between 5 and 10 dogs and their owners there. And over the course of about a year, our dog became quite friendly with humans and became socialized. That's something that you wouldn't find unless you have a dog park. Thank you.
Kara? Kara, are you there?
Hello, this is Kara from West Acton. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Earlier today, I sent a memo that had two items that I wanted to submit for testimony. One of them is a drawing that I took from the Geographic Information Systems off the town website, which showed that there's about just over an acre of looks like pretty mature trees in between the proposed dog park and the closest house. So I want to make sure that you got that and have looked at it. I also would like you to look at, I found a site that actually tapes videos of dog parks that people can have as relaxing sounds. And I found quite a few of these, and largely the noises are coming from the birds or the planes or the nearby traffic. I urge you to take a look at that as well. But I want to address the neighbors because I want them to know that when I was a Board of Selectmen member, that I was the only no vote to the factory-sized daycare. And I worked really hard to get the rest of the selectmen to work against the daycare and come up with illegal methods and research and all of that work to stop the factory-sized daycare. So I hope you do appreciate that. And I urge you also to come forward for, community type planning events. I've never seen you at a water event to express concern about, septic systems around town, just when it's right near your backyard. I urge you to become more involved in planning, adding more and more and more traffic. Great, will come help with the preserving of land and revising of land use policies, not just complain about your backyard. Which I'll tell you, the dog park will be a heck of a lot better than a factory-sized daycare. And then I want to ask a question, John, is that all right? I have a couple comments after because I want to hear what you have to say about these questions.
So what's your first question?
Does the town attorney think that a majority town CPC vote would be so that an eminent domain taking vote is not required?
Nina?
Yes. So does she think that they have anything to, any way to stop this legally?
I just promoted Nina to the panelist.
Hello?
Hi, Nina. Did you get Tara's question?
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Tara. So, yes, if the town owns this property already. We would not need an eminent domain taking of either the land or the access way to provide access to that town property. We would need, as with any CPC project, you would need a CPC vote.
Great, thank you very much. So my last comment is I hope you are not afraid of a lawsuit. The grant will save us more money than a lawsuit would cost, and I urge you to approve this tonight. Thank you very much.
Ken Anderson and David Baxter. Hello.
Hi.
Actually, you need to unmute yourself. Ken Anderson and David Baxter. There you go.
Okay. I live within walking distance of that site, so it's very interesting to me. We had a dog for 14 years who died about 5 years ago. We took the dog walking on trails, and that was wonderful. But the dog did not get the socialization that would have been good being with other dogs. Now that we're older, we're taking care of our daughter's dog sometimes, And this is a very active dog, and we can't take this dog out on the trails. We've taken the dog to the Maynard Dog Park, which is just wonderful. We've taken the dog to the Thorndike Dog Park near Alewife Station, and it's a wonderful experience for the dog. And one thing that strikes me is the diversity of people at these dog parks. There's a diversity of political views, diversity of income, diversity of race. It's just a wonderful mix of people that I don't find anywhere else. And there's always a topic of conversation, your dog or their dog. I read the reviews of these sites. I think there's been a very thorough review of the possible locations. The town really needs a dog park. I think this is the best site, and I think we need to move forward on it as quickly as we can. And I haven't heard any arguments that convince me that we need to take it to town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments?
Well, there's lots. There are many. Before I let the next person speak, Adi C, I need your full name either in the chat or rename yourself in order to call on you. Next, I'll call on Alyssa Nickel.
Good evening. Once again, this is Alyssa Nickel from School Street. I just want to start off by saying that there are many valuable things we have which are not needed for the town to operate. I also want to address the Acton 2020 plan. Several of the goals are supported not only by a dog park, but a dog park at the Main Street location specifically. Under Goal 1, to enhance town character, Objective 1.2 is enhance key centers. And I know this is a little far removed from Kelly's Corner, but it's the gateway to Acton off of Route 2. Under Objective 4, providing more opportunities for community gathering and recreation. This meets Objective 4.1, to create new gathering spaces. I see pretty much all of the objectives of Goal 5, inclusion and diversity, met here. This is specifically Objective 5.1 and 5.4 that support residents of all ages and those with disabilities to participate in the life of the community. And also Goal 6, enhance town-owned assets, and this pair of parcels would definitely be enhanced by a dog park. Goal 7, the objectives are fiscal responsibility, economic development, improve existing commercial areas, improve financial well-being. And as you've heard tonight, there are lots of people that are leaving Acton to find dog parks. So let's create one that lets them stay and invites other people from other towns to come and spend money when they're visiting our dog parks. The most oft-stated objections seem to be increased crime, traffic safety, liability, and easement rights. But I've seen no data presented to back up these conjectures. Quite the contrary, the police chief, town council, and the AHA Senior Housing Project architect have actually confirmed that there is no problem with these issues. There seems to be some confusion about what a private way means. It doesn't mean private, as in, I need some privacy in the bathroom. A private way doesn't mean that the public doesn't have the right to pass over, as town council just confirmed for you. It just means that the municipality isn't responsible for road maintenance, driveway maintenance, shoveling and repaving. Private ways are built to save developers money because they have lower standards than public ways. I found a quote from Medford's city solicitor that says, residents cannot put up a no trespassing sign at the front of a private way. The public has the right to pass on it. People think of private in the sense of something being exclusive, but it's really private in that it has not been accepted as a public way with public standards. It does not mean exclusivity. Being a way, it's open for the public to pass. And one example that's just a couple doors down from me is Piper Lane. That is a private way, and all residents, even before the town bought those parcels, passed up the driveway to access the trails on Great Hill. I countered some of the concerns at last week's AHA commissioners meeting, and subsequent speakers suggested that my experience might be different on School Street. I'm certainly familiar with speeding cars. I raised 3 children here in my home, which sits a mere 30 feet from School Street, where cars do indeed speed. 85% of them, according to the traffic engineer study, travel 35 to 40 in our 25-mile-an-hour zone. Traffic is simply a fact. It's not a reason to avoid building housing or parks or businesses, which might necessitate people crossing the street. We can add a crosswalk. I've heard that a new traffic light isn't as planned. The Kelly's Corner traffic calming measures, those are all reasonable responses to improve pedestrian safety. And finally, the claim of liability has been made by the neighbors, citing a certainty of lawsuits. In personal injury cases, there must be negligence. If there's no negligence, there's no liability. And I wonder if they would make this claim if a playground were proposed at that location, or any other destination people might walk rather than drive to, such as a cafe or a traveler's inn. In response to, I believe it was Selectman Benson's suggestion that it seems that no one wants a dog park next door, there are already dozens and dozens of households with a dog park of sorts next door. All the people that live on my block of School Street, all the people that live in the Nylander Way neighborhood. It's actually quite delightful. I urge the board to recognize that these are NIMBY objections to the dog park specifically, and that denying an easement or filing a lawsuit would punish the Acton Housing Authority, the future residents of their housing projects, who are seniors and people with disabilities who need affordable housing, and indeed all of the town residents. NIMBY objections always have the appearance of legitimacy, but there's no substantiated data to support these objections.
Thank you. Keith and Josie.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm at 14 Isaac Davis, and I'm not going to repeat all the things that my neighbors have expressed as concerns. I wanted to convey the sentiment here that this process to me has still actually confusing in the context of how the Board of Select, or what is the role of the BOS in the context of making the decision here. Is it helping the Acton residents out more on an objective fashion, or is it siding with DPC, or taking account on the number of upvotes that you would receive from the town residents otherwise, and who are voicing their opinion in the favor of the dog park? Against, I'm not against dog park itself. I'm against dog park in its current location because I'm a nearby resident here. I'm an abutting neighbor here. Not knowing that where is the objectivity lying here when we have expressed our concerns about it. And I think number two, it also feels like going to Benson's point earlier that among all the selected sites or all the shortlisted sites that you have here, you have received our objection, our concerns, our neighbor objections and concerns, as well as AHA's latest affirmation of the objection that they are not in the favor of the dog park at this moment. It still feels like you're looking at this thing as 6 people or 6 parties or 10 parties objecting versus 100 upvotes here. So it sounds more like a numbers game. That's number two. And then finally, I'm amazed at some of my Acton residents here who, despite knowing that we are having genuine concerns, and few things I think the previous caller mentioned about a private driveway, I just wanted to clarify that whatever is your definition of private driveway, I have 2 kids, 12 and 10, and we take walk on the Isaac Way during afternoon and evening time. if a car comes running, which actually I see at least 2 cars every day using Google Maps or whatever that they have, trying to actually pass through Isaac Davis Way. If a car comes here and we are walking, listening quietly and peacefully, that's not a pretty sign. I welcome you to stand here, experience it, and then voice your opinion on how it would feel like having a quiet family walk with 2 young ones and a car coming in front of you. And I'm not making up stories. This is the reality actually I'm facing. 90% of the times the car will just turn around or do a reverse and try to actually go away. 10% of the time the person is kind enough to apologize for it. So having said that, I'm still of the opinion that we would not be sidelined because of lower numbers here. And since the town and everyone is voicing in the favor of that, we are going to roll up our sleeves and come and sue us. I'm actually asking that why are we getting into this kind of a fight if we are willing to get a legal battle? That means that we have a ton of energy then focusing on what is relevant and important. Why not find another location that is agreeable by everyone else? And it seems like you are having more financial support for those kind of activities. So I'll stop at this point, because going through a checklist like few of the previous callers have gone through, who are mentioning there is no substantial evidence. How do I provide an evidence when I'm experiencing all these things in my personal life? Do you want me to actually show you a checklist on the phone, on Zoom, or what does that evidence look like when it is an experience like this, right? It is not something that I'm developing a therapy for COVID here, okay? It is about a dog park, and the evidence is an experience here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepan. About how many more people are waiting to speak, David?
5 or so.
Okay.
Adi Chana Sandhumang.
You can call me Adi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank you all for staying late and working on this. So, a couple of things I would like to. I'll try to make it quick. I'll not repeat what others have already mentioned. So, first of all, like you mentioned, Mr. Benson, it is true, be it 5 people or 500 people, if someone is at inconvenience, then that should be taken care of, because we are all part of Acton Town, right? And I think it's more recognizing people than dogs. You know what I'm saying? The priority. Do you want neighborhood, people priority or dog priority? That's one thing. Second thing is, I really, in fact, to be honest, we got a new puppy like a month ago. We got a beagle. So my point here is, even we love dogs. We know the emotional benefits. We want that to be social, but it need not. What we are saying is, we are not against dog park. It's just the location. Why? Let me explain some of the points. Because I said, I have very high respect. We are in a secure neighborhood. We have a good police department. All said and done. Please take, whoever commented, please take a walk on the Hayward towards your first stop should be Skateboard Park. And please tell me how many Jack Daniel bottles you'll see, and all the tiny liquor bottles, how many of them you'll see. I can take a bet. Even if someone cleans up 3 days ago, if you take a walk tomorrow, you will find them. Okay. Second thing, who will take care of the maintenance? Our police department cannot be there for 24 hours. Now, during the AHA meeting, AHA opposed. After the meeting, they took a vote and they opposed. But I did not hear from anybody so far that AHA opposed it. Everyone kind of said they are for this project. So that kind of confused me. And during that meeting, one of the points they brought up was, if you take Route 2 all the way till Harvard, every recreation facility they are closing down by 6 o'clock. Reason? They don't want somebody else to come and make a deal in the parking lot and vis-a-vis on Route 2. So now my point is, out of 10 times, maybe our police can probably intercept 1 or 2. But what about the rest? We are right here. My point here is, I would like my Actonian neighbors to recognize our concerns. It's not like, oh, they said this, they said this, they said this, okay, we are good. I mean, if that is so clear, why will anyone oppose? First of all, think about it. Than the Board of Selectmen, I would like to convince the Dog Park Committee. Why? First of all, they haven't involved us at all. So far, I have not got a single mail from them in their discussions. Second thing, this is word of mouth. I have heard that they have created a partisan here. You know, Dog Park Committee versus Isaac Davis Way residents. That is not healthy. That is really not healthy in a town. This is a town of educated people. And creating such an animosity, such an environment is very deplorable. Okay, I so far have not got any email about discussion. Hey guys, you know, this is what we have. What do you guys think? How can we work together? No, I haven't got an email. I've been in this house for the last 12 years now. Now, next point is, I want to convince them, if this is what it is, then what about our concerns? What about our concerns? You know, like I mentioned, the illegal activities, the cleanliness maintained, all these things. If we can have it in a recreational area, what are we going to lose? If we all have a dog park there, fantastic. Even we'll bring our dogs. We'll all interact there. So fine. Why should this be a fight? That's all I'm going to ask. It's a humble request. Please don't divide to win your objective. This is a humble request because we are all part of Acton. We are here in Acton for a reason, right? It's a beautiful historical town, and let's keep it that way. You know, just those 6 people, let's roll at them and beat them. Definitely, town can do it. Maybe yes, but definitely will not be happy if that's the direction you want to take. Please think about this. Please think about the example you'll be setting as leaders. And that's all I'm going to say. Any dog park committee person, anybody for that matter, as a friendly gesture, please come over. Of course, this is COVID time. I can't invite you for a coffee or a tea part. But please feel free. We can schedule time. We will take you around. We will show you our concern. This is not, I mean, I appreciate every dog park committee member's passion. I really appreciate it. I appreciate their hard work. No doubts about it. But please be reasonable to the neighbors so that, you know, even they can enjoy this project, not dread it. Thank you.
Thank you, Addie. Dana?
Francisca?
Hi, thank you for,
It's not making me laugh. That's how my friends. Hey, I'm trying to get.
Claire?
Sounded like she was trying to quiet the space before she reconnected.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would, these are not part of my prepared remarks, but I will comment very briefly. I'm sorry that this does feel like a fight. I do want to set the record straight. I do feel like I need to defend the dog park committee in the sense that, first of all, as you know, we are a town committee and our meetings are open and posted and anyone is welcome to come to them. We did reach out to the Isaac Davis Way neighbors, perhaps not as quickly as they had hoped, but when we originally in June of 2019 held a public forum and we got feedback that perhaps Main Street wasn't the right place, we turned away from it and we looked at other sites. We looked at 13 other sites in town. We hoped that the NARA site north of NARA on the DPW would work. We got confirmation only in January that that site was not feasible, and we set to work trying to address any anticipated concerns from the neighbors. We sent a letter to 24 people, Isaac Davis Way residents, Main Street residents, Hayward Road residents, inviting them to meet with us and have a dialogue. And that word dialogue was in the letter. Rather than meet with us, a petition was immediately sent to the Board of Selectmen opposing the project. They hadn't even heard what we were proposing. Unfortunately, our meeting was canceled because of COVID. We, lost a couple months because we couldn't even meet ourselves. When we did finally meet with the neighbors in June, we presented our vision. We listened to their concerns. We take their very seriously, but we were told that we didn't need to give the second half of the presentation in which we would address those concerns because they didn't want to hear it. And the quote was, "Nothing you can say will change our minds." So, and you can go back and listen to the recording if you want. So we felt that we were rebuffed by the Isaac Davis Way neighbors and that they were, they went to other people in town, but nobody's come and met with us again. And how do you approach somebody who says, "We don't want to hear what you have to say"? So I just think we need to be fair here, and I feel like I need to defend the committee. And now I'll just make my other really quick point. I'm just bewildered, frankly, at the controversy that the project has generated. It's just a park. It's just a park. The AHA proposal, which the Isaac Davis Way neighbors supported, was a little bit misleading at town meeting because it had a beautiful picture of a park, but they don't have the resources. They've said that they're not going to seek money to build a park there, and they can't build a park on that land because it's town land. And even if they did build a park, people bring their dogs to parks all the time. The only difference is that in this park, we would be providing a safe and secure place for them to run and free, far from the closest neighbors, at least the distance of a football field. And all of this talk about noise and crime and graffiti and people losing their homes is completely out of proportion to what we're proposing. If dog parks were so terrible, they wouldn't be sprouting up all over Massachusetts and across the country. We knew, and Board of Selectmen members recognized publicly, that no matter what site we chose, because Acton is a dense town, that somebody was going to object. I'm sorry that it's on these neighbors, but we really, for all of the reasons that have been brought here, believe that it is the right place. And with good design and fencing, dog parks have been successfully placed on land that is undesirable and unusable, next to highways, next to railroad tracks. Salem, Ayer, Provincetown are two of those examples. What we have here are two very expensive parcels in the middle of town with no other viable use. And I don't think we should let our citizens look at that blight any longer. I think we should give the taxpayers something for their investment. And I urge you to vote tonight to turn those parcels into something that we can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. John, there are two more original speakers. Are you going to want to take people speaking twice after that?
Given that we're after 10 o'clock, so unless there's something new to add, how many speakers are there?
Right now, there are 4 people with their hands raised. 3 of them have never spoken.
Well, let's hear the 3 that have never spoken then.
Okay. Next one, Deborah Lee.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I just wanted to say that I empathize greatly with the sentiments that, the town changing the landscape abutting or near your personal property is disappointing, and that can be frustrating. I have friends who live at Elm and Arlington, and when those changes were being made for some new property to be built there, when there was previously woods behind their homes, that's upsetting. My neighborhood abuts RJ Gray and the high school properties, and so I get it. Changes that are being considered to those property lines or parking lots is a consistent part of our neighborhood dialogue, especially for those abutting residents. So, I just want to add here that I think buying or renting properties in town, I think we all expect that the landscape will remain as it is, that when you look out the window, you will see the things that you see the day that you move in. But that's not a guarantee. Our town is going to, and I would argue must change, especially to improve. And I think that adding a dog park to Acton is one such improvement that should be made. So we have lived in Acton for 11 years without a dog, but the dogs in our neighborhood have afforded us a really excellent way to meet other people, to participate in good conversation, and really to stay connected actually to the town. It's the place, you know, when we're kind of stopping each other on the streets or in our yards around the dogs is where we're sort of connecting around, you know, like, don't forget about that meeting that's coming up, or are you voting, and the important things that really matter to the community. And I think if there's anything that this pandemic especially has taught us, it's that we could all use more of that, places to go, to connect, and to be outside safely and openly, and to connect with one another, especially. So we have now had a dog for 8 months, and I have been shocked at how far we've had to drive to find kind of safe, open places for her to run freely and to play with other dogs. We love our Acton trails. We are on them every single weekend. My kids have earned the badge. But as many of the other residents tonight have suggested, there are so many incremental benefits to which a dog park can afford to people and to pups of all abilities in Acton. So I fully support the dog park at the Main Street location. And I just wanted to also add, in addition to Claire's comments, you know, ongoing thanks for the dog park committee. This research and commitment to the cause has been strenuous, but is well appreciated by myself and I know many of our neighbors and friends. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Dave Kleinschmidt.
Hi, this is David Kleinschmidt. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to show support for the Main Street location for a dog park. I'm a dog owner, and we really appreciate having a park in town that's centrally located. I believe the Main Street site would add a lot to town. It actually presents an extension of the Kelly's Corner project, creating a causeway of public interest along Main Street there, without adding a sort of a municipal or a commercial zone there. So I really appreciate having a more of a park-like setting there. I do agree with all the things people said about socialization, both for dogs and people at these types of places. It's really, really beneficial and important to both. I would also like to suggest I've been to several dog parks in areas that are used as dog parks around town, and I do not see any evidence of crime and or excessive trash that has been mentioned prior to. So thank you for your time. I do really hope you support the Main Street location for a dog park.
Thank you. And John, the only person left is Matt Post, who wants to speak again.
Sure.
Go ahead, Matt.
Actually, it's Laura Post, Matthew's wife. I live at 6 Isaac Davis Way. And after listening to some of the residents in town, I'm not sure their names, but I do really take offense to a couple of the people that do not understand what we're talking about safety and wanting to work peacefully with the town, because we felt so attacked by the dog park committee for the past, I don't know, since January. The only way that we heard about the dog park was through the AHA, not because they contacted us directly. I know about that because I am on the housing committee. I am involved in it. So to the woman who says that we are not involved in our community, I am heavily involved in it. My husband has coached teams for years in this town. He has gone to events and supported fundraising in this town. You have no idea what we've done over 25 years of living in this town. So to me, that is such an insult. You have no idea who we are. I also have 3 children I've raised through the elementary school, preschool, elementary school, junior high, and high school. I am fully aware of what happened at the skateboard park. That is what scares me as a parent the most. Living on a private way, I have driven behind Acton Medical Center and seen drug deals going on for people that have come off Route 2. I've seen it going on, and my children have seen it at the skateboard park before it was opened up to the soccer fields. It was a really big problem, and it was really scary. And you can talk to the drug liaison from the police department who said that when there's a parking lot like that is unattended and people aren't using the facilities at night, there are problems. There are drug deals. It takes 60 seconds for them to pull in there. And all I'm afraid of is some person coming down Isaac Davis Way trying to get there, not via Main Street, but privately, or hopping the fence and trying to come back up our way. And maybe not my last point, but my husband and I bought this property 25 years ago because it was zoned residential to the right of us, residential to the left of us, and agricultural where Kennedy's is. We've put up with Kennedy, we've supported him, we've supported the whole business there when it was commercial and it should have just been an agricultural site. We went through having the trees ripped down right to our property line when they wanted to put the daycare center in. And I totally appreciate the support that the town gave us, because that was horrifying to think that there was going to be a 2.5-story, 10,000 square foot daycare center 10 feet from my house. We've been fighting this for 7 years, so we're a little sensitized to this whole thing, and we fully committed to supporting the senior center next door to us, which is a 2.5-story building that will look directly into my bedroom window. So don't tell me that we haven't been supportive and accommodating and that things change around us. Of course we know that. Of course we do. And we agreed to the senior center because we were presented a beautiful rendering with that lovely gazebo and that beautiful pathway as a walkway, a people park, not a dog park with a big black chain link fence around it, and a parking lot where cars are going to come in at, as you said, Saturday morning, slamming their doors next to our bedroom window. I mean, it's become, we're being surrounded by all kinds of things that were not zoned to begin with in the first place, and we still pay the same taxes. We pay to plow Isaac Davis Way right down to Main Street. I know, I write that check. I've been paying for the town's so-called property for 3 years to plow that piece. And we maintain Isaac Davis Way. And we do have cars that come flying through here who almost hit my dog and my kids for years as they're growing up. So we're a little sensitized to having people come down here that we don't know because we don't feel safe. And it does happen. And I know it doesn't look as busy and people are dying to get out now, but when people do get out and it gets really crowded and traffic is back, that whole intersection will change again. And I am completely supportive of the senior center. I wanted to be a part of it, so I wanted to be on the committee. And now I feel like it's taken on a different life of its own. And I have to say to the dog park committee, what is her name? Joan, the woman who just spoke, who said that they've been communicating with us. My husband walked across to see what was going on, and that same woman looked at my husband and said, "It's me, Matt, and it's none of your business." Really? None of your business. So don't tell me that they've been communicating with us. She's been nothing but printing my husband's name and our family, not just the residents of Isaac Davis Way, but my husband, making him look like he's so mean and he's not a nice person. He's not willing to work with you. You've just put us all on the defensive, and I can't sit back and listen to it anymore. And I'm looking at all of your faces, and you're looking very disinterested and angry, and I don't understand it. I agree with my neighbor Addie, who wants this to be peaceful, and I want everyone in Acton to find a really nice place for this dog park. I've had a dog for 14 years. I get it. I understand. But we have felt very abused and pushed and felt like our rights have not been a consideration. It's really just not a big deal to you all. And it's sad. It's really sad that I've been a part of this town for 25 years. I've substitute taught, I've helped in the community. I've done my part, and I feel like you all are just saying, no, we have not, and no, you don't deserve to be heard, and no, it doesn't need to go to town vote. Our voice doesn't need to be heard. It's just sad. It's really sad, and it's a shame that you don't see our side of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask this to Matt and Laura and Addie and the other Isaac Davis Way names. From the comments of board members, it would appear that the board is going to vote to recommend this site as the dog park. You know, to make this work, is there anything that would satisfy you in having the dog park there? Whether it's giving you an indemnification and hold harmless on the Isaac Davis Way that runs to Main Street, plowing your street, anything that would satisfy the neighbors.
Well, I think that would be something that we have to discuss as neighbors.
Are we on yet? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I think that we would have to get together as a group, our neighbors, similar to the way we met at the gazebo, and talk it through. Because we obviously have some very real concerns, and I think that I can't and Laura can't answer for my other three neighbors at the same time right now. But if we were able to get together and have that meeting, I think that we, could find out if that works.
I think we all want this to work, and that you go away feeling good.
I just gotta tell you, John, we do feel like we've given a lot. We didn't even offer any fuss for the Housing Authority project, and we're kind of getting hit on both sides on this. So it hurts. So
I know that.
We need to talk about it.
I mean, that's why I thought when you have a dog park, it belongs in an existing recreation area.
And I agree.
So that is it on citizen comments, David. Okay, so shall we? Are there any further comments from the board before I suggest a way of voting on the dog park? Jim?
Well, it seemed like your last comments, John, were directed towards the notion of some time-limited conversations with the neighbors to see, what would make it less awful. And I think the deadline we're up against is probably the CPA application deadline, but that's not tomorrow. If you thought that there was a way of bringing some greater degree of harmony to the situation, by waiting until our next meeting for the final vote and a report from you on the conversation with the neighbors, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, just to Jim's point about the CPA application deadline, be aware that CPC has not set that deadline. They're aware the town meeting is going to be delayed for a couple of months. They're kind of waiting on us to see when they're going to set the deadline. So, normally the deadline for applications is somewhere around the 10th or 15th of November, but that's been told like everything else. So, if you think a conversation is worth having, I don't think the CPA deadline is a killer. That's still floating out there. Obviously, it will delay the dog park committee from doing their grant to the Stanton Fund, but a matter of a couple of weeks, one way or another, is not going to matter for CPA.
Joan or David?
I can, be fine with me to take the vote either tonight or in 2 weeks. But you know, I don't want to see this kind of indefinitely postponed.
No.
And you know, I'm also fine with some kind of accommodation for the neighbors. You know, I think that there are ways to you know, make it difficult for people to pass around the gate and things like that, so there'd be less reason why anybody would go down the private portion of Isaac Davis Way, and in maybe something else. I do think, as a number of people have pointed out, that the dog park is really very far away from their you know, their houses. It's not like where the Kennedy landscaping is. So anyway, yeah, I'm fine delaying a couple of weeks, but I wouldn't want to delay, you know, indefinitely postpone.
All right. Well, how about? I mean, the only thing I think we have on for our next meeting on November 2nd would be the racial disparity statement. Agreeing on that. So if we put this on again for 2 weeks, and John and Joan and Matt and Laura, could we get together at a convenient time this week and see if we could work out accommodations? Matt?
Is that directed at me or Matt Frost?
Sorry.
Matt Post.
Matt Post is no longer allowed to talk. Hold on, I gotta find him. Hold on.
Work your magic.
Okay, Matt, you can reply.
Yeah. So let me talk with my neighbors tomorrow. And what day are you thinking?
John, what's your schedule looking like?
Next week's better, but I can make something work if I need to.
Well, let's try to do it this week, because if we have to do it again, you know, a second time, you know, let's get it. Let you know.
So John, give me 2 days. You know, give me 2 days that work for you guys, and I'll see what days are best for my neighbors. So either a Thursday or Friday. Say Thursday or Friday, and then I'll tell them Thursday or Friday.
So Thursday. Well, is that what's? Do you have a preference, Matt? Or are you just saying just give us 2 days?
Tomorrow is not good for me. The rest of the week is fine, but I don't know what's going on with the rest of my neighbors. So.
Okay. All right. We'll be back to you tomorrow. Joan?
No, Friday would be good for me because I'm not available on Thursday and I'm working at the polls.
All right. So, John, could you make Friday work?
Of course.
Thank you. All right. So let's look to Friday. Tom?
So, in the interest of, reiterating that we want to work with neighbors however we can, I just would offer that any representation you want from the dog park committee or that the neighbors would prefer, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. So why don't you join us as well? And if you wish to bring another dog park member, that's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim, did you have something to say?
No, all set.
All right. So let's shoot for Friday, and we'll put this back on for a recommendation on the 2nd. All right?
Great.
So we can bring this discussion to an end.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that ends our business for the evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Second.
And David, if you'd call the roll, please.
Sure. Mr. Snyder Grant.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. Charter.
Aye.
Mr. Benson.